Crane lays down the law with an extra 10,000 weapon drills for his exhausted recruits. While the others push their absolute limits, Ajarn takes it all in stride and begs for even more punishment. The next day, Crane completely ghosts his office duties and dumps the entire workload onto Sophia. Turns out her terrifying administrative efficiency matches his own down to the last detail. Seeking a well-earned break, Crane slips down to the forge to craft a complete custom armor set. He hauls out a massive water tank-sized block of rare river-like silver meteorite iron. He brings down his heavy hammer for the very first stroke, only to realize this indestructible ore is going to be an absolute nightmare to shape. After 3 grueling days and nights of nonstop hammering, he finally gets the ore into a rough initial shape. He tosses the stubborn mass into the furnace to bake while he handles other business. His communication crystal chimes with an update from the Pope on the newly expanded legal code. With 449 airtight articles, the draft looks surprisingly solid. Crane coordinates with the religious leader to push the new regulations live at tomorrow's grand welcoming ceremony. He casually introduces the Pope to a brand new concept called a trial run. Just as he wraps up, Sophia pops in carrying today's fresh case files. Having not seen Crane in 3 solid days, she's practically vibrating with separation anxiety. He breezes through her completed paperwork and gives her work top marks. Reader, she processed all of that before noon, and honestly, who wouldn't want a secretary that cracked? Delighted by her absurd competence, Crane drops a devastatingly smooth compliment straight to her face. He tells her point blank that he literally cannot live without her anymore. Sophia freezes up completely, her brain short-circuiting as her face blazes bright red. She stammers out a flustered protest while trying to process if he actually just said that. Crane immediately pivots back to a stone-cold professional expression without missing a beat. He insists he's just talking about her elite office skills, completely ignoring the smoke coming out of her ears. Evening rolls around, and the high society nobles pack out the lavishly decorated banquet hall. Lord Iwasaka stands near the entrance, acting as bouncer and crowd control. A swarm of ambitious social climbers immediately corner the city lord, demanding leaked spoilers. They're dying to know what massive policy bomb the Holy Sun is about to drop tonight. Iwasaka wisely warns them that tonight's announcement is going to completely flip Iron Rock City upside down. Naturally, this only makes the crowd's collective anxiety skyrocket. An ambitious 30-something socialite boldly tests the waters about the Holy Sun's marital status. Iwasaka shoots her down instantly, reminding her there's a generational age gap she simply cannot cross. At the grand banquet, a smitten noblewoman openly drools over the mere thought of Crane, wishing she could stare at that divine face all day to cure her winter blues. When the city lord brutally mocks her public thirst, the surrounding lords cackle without mercy, proving that being a low-ranking viscount means zero protection from roasting. Before the main event, Count Dabeng is soaking up the spotlight like a sponge, basking in the sudden wave of desperate bootlickers begging for an introduction. Parasitic nobles dangle luxury gifts and prized orc slaves in front of him, hoping to buy a tiny slice of his imaginary inner circle status with the legendary Holy Sun. Dabeng is high on pure ego right now, realizing that dropping Crane's name once has totally upgraded his social tier. Reader, the man is riding this coattails straight to the moon. Meanwhile, away from the peasant circus, Kellen stands in his private quarters rocking a razor-sharp white suit that somehow makes perfection look even more unfair.
Milia watches him with a totally dazed gaze, her face flashing bright red as he casually drops smooth-talking teases that leave her completely flustered.
After months of grueling training, our boy has unlocked maximum verbal riz, laughing out loud as Milia admits he would make a stunning male queen. White outfits usually wash people out and scream fashion disaster, but Kellen's snow-white skin and god-tier proportions pull it off with terrifying ease. When Kellen finally steps into the venue, the entire room slams the brakes on its own noise. The sheer kinetic force of his entrance turns a roaring party into dead silence. He takes center stage and breaks the spell with a bright, youthful greeting welcoming everyone to his welcome dinner, jolting the starstruck crowd back to reality. Over in the shadowy corner, A trio of low-life slave traders put their repulsive heads together to cook up a sickening business scheme. They whisper back and forth about market values, seriously debating how many millions a top-tier human specimen like the Holy Sun would pull at an underground auction. Kellen ignores the drooling hordes staring at him like starving wolves, completely used to being the main dish in every room he enters. He drops a massive bombshell on the crowd, casually announcing that he and the Pope have overhauled the entire legal code into a hefty 449-article beast. While everyone else freezes in sheer panic over what new rules might ruin their rackets, Dabang steps up to suck up publicly. For fuck's sake, at least pretend to have a spine, Dabang. Count Dabang kicked off the meeting by aggressively kissing up to the Holy Sun. Every other sycophant in the room quickly chimed in, too terrified to question anything before seeing the fine print. Crane just sat back and soaked in the pathetic flattery. He marked Daybang down as a useful lapdog to keep around for future dirty work. When the new legal code finally materialized before them, the assembly braced themselves for a total disaster. They fully expected an authoritarian nightmare designed to strip them of their wealth. Article 1 hit the slave-owning aristocrats like a physical blow. Banning the capture of commoners under threat of rank reduction meant their most lucrative rackets were suddenly illegal. However, as the lords kept reading through the 449 rules, their panic melted away. Most of the clauses actually subsidized startups and rewarded legitimate commercial ventures. Dabang was the first to bounce back and start licking boots again, praising the brilliant reforms to high heaven. Naturally, the rest of the sheep fell right in line behind him. Not everyone was buying it, especially the die-hard slave traders facing imminent financial ruin. One brave idiot decided to challenge the rules out loud right then and there. Viscount Leto stood up and whined that the slavery clauses were way too harsh. Crane flashed him a chilling smile, realizing he had just found his designated punching bag. Crane politely asked his name and title before dropping the death sentence. He claimed he would personally report Leto's complaints directly to the Supreme Pontiff. Leto instantly realized he had just signed his own death warrant and started backpedaling like a madman. He babbled that it was all a terrible joke just to lighten the mood. Reader, he did not find it funny in the slightest. Crane bluntly informed the whimpering fool that his opposition sounded entirely genuine. The entire room looked at Leto like he had just tried to juggle live grenades. You do not openly cross the Holy Sun in public unless you are actively looking to get erased. That execution by words effectively shut every other slave trader's mouth for the rest of the evening. Crane stepped off the stage to mingle, having successfully established his authority. Count Daybang eagerly rushed over to introduce the city's heavyweight moguls. First up was Marquise Tier, a rugged ore tycoon who owned half the heavy industry in Iron Rock City. Next came Countess Sana, a breathtaking beauty who managed a massive empire of master blacksmith shops. Honestly, 3 centuries of misery and the local mob bosses still get multi-million-dollar portfolios. The final introduction was Count Soku, a seemingly mild-mannered fellow with eyes sharp enough to cut glass. With his inner circle locked in, Crane's takeover of the local elite was off to a roaring start. At the grand welcoming banquet, I found myself cornered by a stunning female blacksmith named Sana. Beside me, my own talented smith Sophia exchanged frosty, plastic pleasantries with her. Next came Count Soku, a slick transportation tycoon who eagerly offered his services for my future endeavors. I brushed him off with a quick nod, just wanting the night to end. By the time the endless social torture finally wrapped up, I nearly collapsed from pure exhaustion. Dealing with scheming nobles and clingy women is way worse than fighting monsters. The next morning, I had our newly drafted legal code carved directly into a massive stone monument in the central plaza. To make sure everyone knew, we blasted it across town with magic. At first, the locals panicked, expecting the usual noble tyranny. But as they read the actual text, realizing it protected their basic rights, tears of sheer relief welled in their eyes. Meanwhile, I made an immediate example of Viscount Leto, the pompous jerk from the banquet. His entire estate was seized and his assets liquidated before noon for human trafficking. That swift, brutal takedown sent the entire local nobility into a tailspin of absolute terror. Reader, they finally learned what happens when you cross the new boss. I didn't lose sleep over Leto, seeing as the bastard ran a vile slave trade operations behind the scenes. Honestly, Public flogging would have been far too generous for trash like that. Staring out at the crowd, a glaring problem hit me square in the face. Sure, we have a new legal code and a scared nobility, but who the hell is actually going to enforce it? The existing patrol units only protect the rich neighborhoods, leaving the civilian quarters at the mercy of glorified street thugs. It's basically organized crime with a badge. Time to do some undercover fieldwork. I slipped into some basic civilian rags, slapped on a disguise mask, and prepared to sneak out to see the real city. Of course, my cover was blown the exact second I stepped into the hallway. Sophia popped out of her room, already dressed in a matching disguise and grinning from ear to ear. She begged to tag along for the unauthorized inspection tour. I figured an extra pair of eyes wouldn't hurt, so off into the underbelly we went together. We slipped past the gates and plunged right into the sprawling residential slums. Keeping our mouths shut and our eyes open let us absorb the raw, unfiltered misery of the streets. Back at headquarters, local intelligence agents rushed to brief the city lord about our stealthy little excursion. They were practically sweating bullets over our safety. The city lord just shook his head and waved them off, knowing full well I could handle a couple of pickpockets. Oh, for fuck's sake, if only those thugs knew who was walking into their trap. Keen on keeping things moving efficiently, Crane and Sophia stride purposefully toward the outer edge of town. Crane suddenly stops in his tracks and whips around, catching Sophia completely off guard as she hurries to keep up. Peering around the corner into a poorer neighborhood, they spot a flashy aristocrat grinning maliciously at two helpless girls. The brave girl tries to push back, reminding the arrogant lord that harsh new laws strictly forbid kidnapping commoners. Hearing those forbidden words shatters the noble's mood, and he instantly flies into a blind rage at her audacity. Scared stiff by the display of power, the surrounding locals keep their mouths shut and pretend they saw nothing. The girls' last fragile shred of hope vanishes as they realize the Holy Son's grand reforms are nothing more than a cruel joke. Sophia glances sideways and instantly recognizes that terrifying dark look on Crane's face. That noble is completely fucked. Crane strolls right into the center of the gathering mob, having ditched his mask without a single soul noticing until now. The moment the crowd realizes who just walked into their midst, every single commoner drops straight to their knees. Miga turns around in a cold panic, feeling like he just stared straight into the eyes of an avenging ghost. With zero warmth in his voice, Crane leans in close and calmly asks the thoroughly terrified aristocrat who he is. Crane casually drops the terrifying tale of the last lord who questioned the law, leaving Miga shaking in his boots. Without missing a beat, Crane grabs the Baron's shoulder and casually shatters his collarbone with a sickening crunch. Miga faceplants into the mud, sobbing in agony and screaming that it was his very first time breaking the rules. Reader, it was definitely not his first time, and the enraged townspeople step up to air every single one of his dirty secrets. The pathetic noble collapses in a wet heap of terror, completely paralyzed by the handsome youth towering over him with icy disdain. With a casual clap and zero hesitation, Crane pops the bastard's head like an overripe melon to clear the trash off the street. The rescued girls freeze dead in their tracks, entirely hypnotized by the otherworldly, drop-dead gorgeous face of their savior. Commoners on the sidelines stare in utter shock, their brains short-circuiting because a big shot actually shed blood to avenge ordinary folk. Drums roll for the local law enforcement, who stomp onto the crime scene and instantly spot their precious dead aristocrat. The captain throws a massive power trip, screaming at the peasants and ordering his thugs to collar every single witness in sight. Crane shoots him a look so frosty it could freeze hell over, momentarily throwing the clueless captain completely off his rhythm. Spoiler alert, the captain takes one look at Crane's casual clothes and decides to bet his entire life on being a complete moron. Running on pure, unfiltered idiocy, the captain rears back and tries to slap the Holy Son right across his ridiculously photogenic face. Before the hand even connects, Sophia catches his wrist with a death grip. Reader, he genuinely thought he was the main character today. The captain openly spits on the law, barking that he has never once bothered to read a legal code in his entire career. Crane just stands there pinching the bridge of his nose, regretting every single life choice that led him to this absolute clown town. The captain finally notices his own men staring at him like he's a dead man walking, but his thick skull still refuses to process it. Countess Sana comes sprinting in like her hair is on fire, loudly dropping titles that make the captain's soul leave his body. Gravity suddenly hits the captain very hard as he faceplants onto his knees, realizing he just signed his own death warrant. Dragged away kicking and screaming into the abyss, the former captain learns the hard way that actions have permanent consequences. Sana watches the Holy Sun inspect the city security details, completely convinced that nobles never lift a finger without personal gain. She tries to reverse engineer his hidden motives, assuming every action must hide a selfish plot. Though he reads right through her ulterior motives, Cran casually accepts her invitation to a high-class local tavern. He still makes sure his guards escort the rescued girls safely home first. The two rescued sisters return home feeling like they just walked out of a fairy tale. They realize they owe everything to the mysterious prince who saved them from a tragic fate. Stepping inside the upscale tavern, Cran notices the refined, hushed atmosphere immediately. Wealthy patrons murmur and nod in silent deference as the Holy Sun walks past them. Seated in a private room, Sana asks what he wants to eat, and Cran deadpans a request for the entire menu. She laughs it off, assuming the holy man is just trying to be funny. When Sana boldly asks if Sophia is his fiancée, poor Sophia snaps straight up in instant suspense. She hangs on every syllable, praying for a confirmation that could change her life. Cran gives a delightfully ambiguous answer, admitting he is not entirely sure yet but values her deeply. Sophia melts into a puddle of pure, love-struck shyness right then and there. Sana, however, feels a sudden spike of annoyance at the vague reply because it was given to a mere kid. Honestly, reader, she's salty she didn't get flirted with instead. Pushing her romantic daydreams aside, Sana pivots straight back to business and asks what changes he plans to make. Cran drops the bombshell that he intends to overhaul the corrupt patrol forces. He explains his plan to establish a brand new law enforcement department to stamp out rampant civilian bullying. It is a massive institutional shift, and Sana's brain starts racing at the possibilities. Sana immediately spots a golden opportunity to infiltrate the new agency with her own loyal cronies. Securing positions here would instantly skyrocket her political standing in the city. She wastes zero time offering to recommend candidates for the open enforcement positions. Cran agrees on one strict condition. Anyone she sends must possess absolute moral integrity. Plates of Iron Rock City's signature stone-roasted barbecue arrive, filling the private room with a rich, savory aroma. Cran finally gets a real chance to dig into the local cuisine. Forgetting all his usual indifference, Cran dives into the feast with genuine boyish enthusiasm. Even while eating at high speed, his table manners remain remarkably pristine. Watching him eat, Sana's paranoid brain spirals into a bizarre, hyper-specific romantic fantasy involving secret neighbors and dark corners. For fuck's sake, woman, he is just eating a pork chop. Cran and Sophia stare blankly at Sana as she loses her entire mind to her own unhinged daydreaming. Watching her zone out like a lunatic, Cran finally realizes she is clinically unhinged. Sana snaps out of a deep trance lasting 15 minutes, praying desperately that nobody caught her zoning out. She hides her chronic delusion disorder while Crane finishes his meal at lightning speed. With zero time to waste on idle chatter, Crane abandons the table to focus on absorbing the Insect King and boosting his strength. He heads straight back to the City Lord's mansion. Iwasuke immediately knows trouble is brewing when the Holy Sun requests a meeting. He bracingly asks for Crane's honest review of Ironclad City's current state. Crane lays down the brutal truth, exposing a lax management structure and rampant official corruption. Iwasuke flushes with embarrassment, stunned by the sheer scale of the failure. Realizing even patrol captains are totally clueless about basic laws, Iwasuke concedes entirely. He agrees to overhaul the entire military apparatus and purge incompetent officers. That very evening, Iwasuke reports the day's turbulent events directly to the Pope. Reader, the man is learning the hard way that supervision is a bitch. The Pope listens with mounting satisfaction, thoroughly impressed by his young successor's rapid progress. He envisions a completely overhauled ironclad city under Crane's rule. The next morning, the gathered Earth Lizard Legion faces Lord Iwasuke in the main yard. The air crackles with anticipation as the recruitment for the new law enforcement division kicks off. Every single soldier realizes this is their golden ticket to earn the Holy Sun's favor and repay their debts. They look ready to tear each other apart just to secure a spot. Meanwhile, Connie runs a separate recruitment hub in the heart of the city, throwing doors open to nobles and commoners alike. The queue stretches endlessly down the paved street. Connie dangles lucrative salaries and monster meat bonuses to hook the masses. Ambitious nobles swarm the area, desperate to plant their own spies inside the new security apparatus. She implements a strict screening process, handing out dense instructional materials to every single hopeful. You gotta respect the grind of background checks. The first phase is a brutal 3-day written exam testing raw moral character and insight. Crane leaves nothing to chance, weeding out the idiots and the corrupt right from the jump. Crane personally conducts the final round of face-to-face interviews. Only the sharpest elites with spotless backgrounds survive this grueling gauntlet of tests. With the street beatdowns of arrogant nobles still fresh in everyone's minds, the city's corrupt upper crust finally starts behaving. Crime plummets at a visible pace across the town. Sure, the surface looks pristine and orderly, but dark atrocities still fester in the hidden slums. For fuck's sake, you can't clean up a cesspool overnight. My scaled companion is finally deep into its next evolutionary slumber, surrounded by the quiet hum of my workshop. I've buried myself in work for days, hammering away at meteorite iron to forge my brand new set of armor.
Turns out all that hammering secretly buffed my stats while I wasn't looking, quietly bumping my luck up to 16.
When I finally step out of the forge, I find myself staring straight into a wall of deep purple scales that literally block out the sun. After shedding its skin 3 times, this absolute unit grew 100 meters long and looks strong enough to flatten me into a pancake. And because reality loves flexing on me, the oversized beast casually shrinks down into a pocket-sized 5 centimeter noodle. We decided to test its new toxic breath on a chunk of premium ore that usually takes forever to soften in a blazing furnace. Reader, the metal literally melted into slag in seconds without the pet needing a single breath break. Terrifying stuff. It even unlocked a domain skill that doubles all its poison damage, meaning one accidental puff of this gas would vaporize me instantly. Realizing my pet completely outclasses me now, I decide it is time to touch grass and check on the city's new law enforcement recruits. I grab a random servant in the hallway and find out Sophia is currently running the final martial arts exams down in the central plaza. I slip into the central square unnoticed, watching the cream of the crop battle it out for badge placements. Connie and Sophia are grading the final 100 survivors, but my goal is to eventually scale this up to 1,000 officers. I watch the matches for a few minutes and immediately start rubbing my temples in deep disappointment. 16 levels of combat mastery and these guys fight like drunken toddlers swinging pool noodles. Fucking stellar. Turns out Holy Light City took all the actual talent first, leaving Rock Iron City to scrape the bottom of the barrel. Crane decides to ghost the viewing area and accidentally makes eye contact with Iwasaka on his way out. They share a knowing nod, like two kids skipping class, and then Crane simply vanishes. Instead of mingling with the masses, our favorite overachiever holes up in his forge to hammer out some new gear. He's way too busy crafting overpowered weapons to care about the festival. Meanwhile, Connie and Sophia trap a poor maid in the hallway to interrogate her about Crane's whereabouts. The poor girl looks like she's about to be fed to the wolves just for relaying a message. The final round of interviews for the enforcement department wraps up with a genuinely surprising plot twist. Against all odds, 4 candidates actually pass the ultimate selflessness test. These 4 lucky bastards walk straight into top-tier law enforcement roles with fat paychecks and prime authority. Not a bad haul for simply not being totally selfish pricks for 5 minutes. Deep within the Holy Demon Empire, the cloned Holy Heart is leveling up at an utterly absurd pace. With a fallen angel soul riding shotgun, this abomination is shooting straight toward the top. Augustine practically rubs his hands together in glee watching his pet project hit level 89. Honestly, the old bastard couldn't look more proud if he tried. The Holy Heart glares at Augustine with eyes blazing with pure, unadulterated vengeance. Reader, she is extremely pissed off and wants to murder the papacy yesterday. Augustine calmly tells the ticking time bomb to cool her jets and wait for the right moment. He warns her that charging in with a half-baked revenge boner will just get her killed. Later that night, a shady operative drops in to deliver some piping hot intelligence on the Pope's health. Turns out the big boss of the Holy See is falling apart faster than a cheap IKEA chair. Augustine flashes a deeply sinister grin upon learning his main rival is basically rotting from the inside out. Talk about hitting the jackpot without even buying a ticket. Over at headquarters, Ilya bursts into the Pope's office looking like she just saw a ghost. She's got some deeply alarming numbers that are about to ruin everyone's day. She drops the bombshell that monster sightings in the abyss have suddenly plummeted by a staggering 80%. Even the Pope stops pretending to look wise and looks genuinely rattled. Ilya warns him that this unnatural quiet is the ultimate calm before a catastrophic storm. When the dam finally breaks, even their elite strike force won't be able to hold the line. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the Pope immediately orders the entire Vatican to mobilize. If an apocalypse is coming, they're going to need every single cardinal ready for war. The conversation opens with a question that is not really a question. Somebody wants to know how much Ilya has been keeping track of what our man has been up to lately. She says she has no idea, which is a flat lie. She has been following every move he has made, and she has been quietly delighted about all of it. What he did to Iron City is the reason. He took a place that was circling the drain and turned it into something that actually works, and she was happier about that than anyone. Because if he can do that to one city, he can do it to the entire papacy. Strength and strategy in the same person. In her private ledger, he is already the perfect candidate for Pope. Not everyone in the building agrees. A seat that powerful attracts people who have spent decades planning to sit in it, and none of them enjoy watching an outsider climb the ladder this fast. Which is roughly when we learn that something considerably uglier has been running underneath the politics the whole time. There is a ritual being prepared, not a sanctioned one, the kind that gets a person removed from the historical record along with everyone who helped them. The markings are old and wrong, and whoever laid them out knew exactly what they were doing. This was not improvised in an afternoon. The people running it are not fanatics off the street either. They are inside the church, they are senior, and they have been patient about it. When Ilya works out what is actually being planned, the political game stops mattering to her entirely. This is no longer about who gets a title. She moves fast because the window on something like this is measured in hours, and she has already spent too many of them being clever. Meanwhile, the man at the center of all this is a long way away, entirely unaware that his name has just been written into somebody's ceremony. The last piece goes into place and the chamber's light changes color. Whatever this is, it is no longer theoretical, and the thing they have been trying to reach reaches back. That is the part they were not ready for, because these things never arrive on the terms you set for them. Their careful ceremony stops being theirs about 4 seconds in. Congratulations, gentlemen, you have successfully summoned your own problem. By the time anyone reaches that chamber, the situation inside has already stopped being a plot and started being an emergency, and the whole balance of power in the church is about to be rewritten. A sudden, bone-chilling frost shoots through the heart of the Vatican, rattling the nerves of every holy official inside. Two powerful figures freeze in place, instantly recognizing the sickening malice behind the drop in temperature. Without wasting a second, the chief knight blinks across the courtyard only to find the supreme pontiff already waiting by the palace gates with a grave expression. Their shared look confirms every worst fear. This icy terror is no illusion. The pontiff delivers the terrifying verdict that a forbidden evil god ritual has just been triggered. To make matters worse, the whole setup was hidden right inside church territory, proving a catastrophic failure in their security. Countless deadly abysses are already tearing open across the kingdom's academy and beyond, giving them a tight 3-day window to seal the rifts. Every single warrior in the Vatican is scrambled into action to hunt down the expanding tiers. While the holy faction scrambles, rogue factions in neighboring kingdoms rejoice instead of panicking, treating the global catastrophe as a welcome blessing. These twisted zealots immediately gear up for long-awaited vengeance against their hated rivals. Miles away, our master forger wipes the sweat from his brow after finally finishing an entire legendary set of custom gear. Putting on the finished armor instantly skyrockets his combat power by a whole tier. All those sleepless hours hammering raw metal pushed his legendary forging technique right to its absolute peak. Reader, the man ground his skill so hard he straight up surpassed the Guildmaster, cementing himself as the undisputed top blacksmith alive. His celebratory victory lap gets cut brutally short when that same sickeningly cold wave washes over his workshop. For fuck's sake, you'd think a guy could enjoy a rare crafting win for more than 5 minutes before reality breaks. Even his prized Thunder Python partner is losing its mind, trembling in sheer terror from the distant shockwave. This is a creature that wouldn't flinch if a dragon breathed down its neck, yet some invisible force has it petrified. Stepping outside into the freezing air, he watches in horror as the clouds above turn a violent, bruised red. The entire population of Iron Rock City freezes in place, staring up at the heavens as mass panic begins to set in. The local lord pops up right beside him out of nowhere, looking just as clueless about the red sky as everyone else. When asked what's happening, the veteran leader admits they are staring straight down the barrel of a major crisis. Desperate to coordinate, the blacksmith slams his hand against his communication crystal, only to watch it short out and die. Every magical defense array in the city flatlines at the same time, completely cutting off outside contact. With communications fried, the authorities instantly pivot to emergency mode, funneling terrified citizens into underground shelters by the thousands. Law enforcement officers sprint through the alleys, keeping order before the hidden threats can manifest. Realizing sitting around won't fix a damn thing, he decides to hunt down the malice himself while the Lord holds down the fort. His battle senses are screaming at him, pointing straight toward the nearest concentrated sources of evil energy. Hunting down an ominous aura, Crane stumbles upon a terrifying discovery: a tiny, writhing black slit known as an Eye of the Abyss. Reader, he did not think this would be on his to-do list today. Knowing the absolute disaster these things cause, he rolls up his sleeves and painstakingly seals the anomaly. It takes over an hour of intense effort just to close one single crack. Returning to his comrades, Crane slams down a makeshift map peppered with a staggering 300 red dots. Every single dot marks another ticking time bomb waiting to rupture. He bolts toward the biggest threat on the map, finding a colossal abyss eye stretching across the firmament. This monstrosity is larger than a standard rift and infinitely more dangerous. Across all 12 papacy cities, humanity scrambles in a desperate race against time to mend the fracturing reality. Everyone is working flat out, but the sheer volume of tears is overwhelming. Sensing the clock running out, the Holy Demon Empire kicks its master plan into gear. They deploy advanced teleportation arrays to bypass the borders and drop an entire army right at the doorstep. High inside the Holy See, the elderly Pope feels the sudden shift in the air and snaps to his feet. He finally connects the dots as the gravity of the whole situation crashes down on him. Realizing he was the primary target all along, he walks out to meet his destiny head on. He wastes no breath on hesitation, though a heavy wave of regret pulls at his chest. He deeply regrets not giving Crane enough time to mature and take the reins. If only he had foreseen this ruthless chess move, things might have turned out differently. 7 menacing shadows materialize out of the ether, blocking his path with lethal intent. Augustine and the evil god ritualist lead a pack of elite killers straight to his doorstep. Gazing at the execution squad, the Pope immediately recognizes that his fading health has been leaked. They came to finish off a cripple, but they vastly underestimated who they were cornering. Augustine smugly drops the act and tells the old man to stop pretending, offering him a quick death as a twisted sign of respect. For fuck's sake, talk about kicking a man while he's down. The Pope lets out a fierce laugh, reminding them of who holds the true power. With a terrifying surge of overwhelming pressure, he unleashes a suffocating wave of divine might. Augustine stumbles back in absolute horror, completely blindsided by the sudden display of power. He expected a dying old man on life support, not a feral beast ready to tear them apart. Knowing his time is up, the Pope willingly ignites his remaining life force into a blazing inferno. He plans to drag as many of these scumbags down to hell with him as humanly possible. Miles away on active duty, Ilya jolts as she feels the violent eruption tearing through the capital. She instantly knows the Pope's health is gone, and a cold dread grips her heart. Realizing the entire chaos is a massive diversion targeting the Pope, Ilya drops everything and sprints back toward Holy Light City. She figures if the Supreme Leader bites it, saving the world from abyssal monsters is utterly pointless. Meanwhile, the geriatric Pope is living his absolute best life, channeling a terrifying burst of late-stage power to ruthlessly beat down the Empire's top dogs. Augustine is already missing an arm and running for his damn life, wondering how this old geezer isn't dead yet. The Pope feels better than he has in decades, fully embracing this blazing candle end of his life. He is closing the distance fast, and Augustine is about to learn what a real beatdown looks like. Right when the execution is about to drop, a silver-haired girl materializes from nowhere, wrapping herself in suffocating dark energy to intercept the furious pontiff. The Pope stops dead in his tracks and recognizes his ancient peer, Hyza Veer, the Empire's top-ranked mage. She looks young, but they've been trading punches since the Stone Age. Turns out this lunatic masterminded the evil god ritual just for her own selfish ambitions, completely throwing away her remaining shreds of humanity. Reader, she is past the point of redemption, and the Pope knows it's time to put her down. Even wrapped in stolen divine favor, Hyza freezes up like a deer in headlights under the sheer weight of the old man's killing intent. The sheer terror of her past beatdowns comes rushing back, completely robbing her of the will to fight. The Pope isn't stupid. Trying to bash through a raid boss takes too much time, so he pivots instantly and goes for the squishy targets. He blitzes past Hysa before she can even blink. Hysa screams a frantic warning as she realizes too late that her allies are about to become red mist. But warning them is one thing, surviving the freight train coming their way is another. The Imperial elites throw up a ninth-tier barrier that would normally shrug off a meteor, but the Pope smashes it to pieces like a wet paper bag. He grabs the nearest screaming mage and twists his head right off his shoulders with a flick of his wrist. First blood goes to the geriatric nightmare. The next poor bastard tries to scramble away, but absolute power doesn't care about your cardio. He lasts about as long as a snowball in a furnace before getting instantly pulverized. While the old man is busy playing whack-a-mole, Hysa drives a dark tendril straight through his chest, blasting a massive, smoking crater right out of his back. The evil curse rots his organs from the inside out, making him cough up a lung, but the stubborn old bastard refuses to even look at her. He just locks onto the next victim on his hit list. For fuck's sake, the remaining cowards finally grow a spine and carpet bomb the area with every ninth-tier spell in their arsenal. They blow his left leg clean off, but the maniac just keeps marching forward and claims a third victim. 3 minutes and 4 corpses later, the Pope is literally held together by sheer spite and holy magic, and the survivors are too terrified to even breathe. He's a walking corpse on the edge of death, but he's already done enough to haunt their nightmares forever. Too exhausted to even lift a finger, the Pope decides to throw caution to the wind. He taps into a forbidden power source, willingly burning away his very soul for one final burst of strength. Hysa and her allies watch in sheer disbelief as the glowing aura flares up. Realizing he's given up any chance of future reincarnation, they turn tail and bolt without a second thought. Ignoring the fleeing Augustine, the Pope locks his sights entirely on Hysa. His soul-fueled momentum makes him terrifyingly fast, closing the gap between them in the blink of an eye. A lagging ninth-tier mage tries to scramble away but gets flattened into mincemeat by a single stray palm strike. Seriously, running in a straight line from a boss-tier threat? Classic rookie mistake. Hysa's stomach drops out when she notices the relentless pursuit is meant exclusively for her. She scrambles desperately to find an escape route, but the net is closing in fast. Out of options and totally outrun, she slams on the brakes and spins around to make her final stand. Reader, she was completely out of her depth, but pride dies hard. The relentless drain pushes the demonic corruption to his very face, turning his features into a grotesque mask. Every strike he unleashes now crackles with a volatile blend of gold and black energy. He unleashes 1,000 brutal palm strikes in a single second, ripping through her protective enchantments like tissue paper. She gets launched backward before she can even process the hit. Before she can recover her footing, he's already waiting behind her like a jump scare in a horror movie. A sickening crack echoes across the canyon as her spine takes the brunt of the blow. Her 10th tier vitality instantly goes to work patching up the shattered bones. Thanks to the evil god's blessing, the nasty demonic corruption slides right off her skin without taking hold. 10th tier or not, she can't match his blinding speed and takes a relentless flurry of hundreds of hits. Half of them land square, bending her limbs into shapes nature never intended. Her eyes roll back into her head as she blacks out from the sheer trauma. Honestly, passing out is the best thing that could happen to her at this exact second. The Pope winds up a devastating chop aimed straight at her neck to finish the job once and for all. Talk about a hostile wake up call. Deep seated survival instincts jerk her violently back to consciousness at the 11th hour. She manages a desperate last second twist to dodge instant decapitation. She avoids the worst of it, but the follow up impact leaves her utterly helpless and broken on the ground. A giant hand fills her vision, and the final curtain starts to drop. As her life flashes before her eyes, bitter memories of unrequited obsession and bloody betrayal replay in her mind. All that pride and malice ending right here in the dirt. Heisa braces herself for the final blow, only for the deadly hand to halt right before her eyes. The invincible old man has finally exhausted his last breath, leaving her alive against all odds. Realizing the supreme ruler of the papacy is truly dead, she stares at the corpse in absolute disbelief. 7 top assassins came for this old dog, and almost all of them paid with their lives. She swallows her terror, knowing that if the old man had been at his peak, he would have wiped out entire empires single-handedly. Moving fast despite her broken body, she gulps down a dark potion to force her magic back online. 15 minutes later, Ilya sprints back to the palace like a madwoman, her chest tightening as she feels the total absence of that familiar, towering aura. She screams out the Pope's name into the ruins, but gets only silence in return. Scrambling through the wreckage, she finds the mangled remains of the enemy's elite strike force. Reality crashes down on her like a sledgehammer. Ashang is gone for good, having burned his very soul to take down his ambushers. The grief instantly mutates into a lethal, unquenchable bloodlust. She wants to tear the Holy Demon Empire apart piece by piece, but she forces her rage to heal. Charging blindly into their capital right now is a great way to get herself killed. She marches up to the grand bell of the Holy See, taking a deep, shuddering breath before bringing the heavy striker down with all her might. The first deep, hollow boom echoes across Holy Light City, followed immediately by a second. For fuck's sake, nothing good ever follows a midnight bell ringing. With every single chime, the color drains completely from the faces of the city's residents. Everyone knows the grim counting ritual, and nobody wants to hear that 99th note. Panic ripples through the populace as they mutter desperate prayers to whatever gods are listening. They owe their entire safety to the old man, and they know his replacement won't be nearly as kind. Far away at the King's Academy, officers of the Judgment Legion freeze mid-stride as the ominous sound reaches their ears. Even a dozen chimes is enough to spell absolute disaster. The relentless death knell presses on, hammering relentlessly against the raw nerves of everyone within earshot. There's no escaping the heavy, suffocating weight of the sound. When the 99th chime finally tears through the air, collective heartbreak ripples across the city. Denial shatters instantly into a harsh, brutal reality. Miles away in Cran's domain, the distant echoes of the bell shatter his concentration. Hearing that the old monster is dead nearly causes him to drop his delicate magical project. For one careless second, his hands slip, and the abyss eye he spent ages repairing threatens to detonate in his face. Honestly, timing your demise so poorly is just rude. Stifling his raw grief, our hero poured every ounce of focus into finishing the repairs on the floating artifact. He was inches away from the finish line, and stopping now meant throwing all his grueling work straight into the trash. Right on the verge of success, a vicious black slash materialized out of nowhere and hurtled straight for his neck. He threw himself sideways on pure instinct, desperately dodging what should have been a fatal blow. Even with his lightning-fast reflexes, the sneak attack was too swift to fully evade. The dark blade grazed his shoulder plates, leaving a shallow gouge that would have taken his arm clean off without his new armor. He scrambled up and locked eyes with his attacker, instantly recognizing the persistent pest who refused to stay dead. Honestly, for fuck's sake, how many times do we have to teach this dramatic lunatic a lesson? Hearing his calm voice pushed her completely over the edge into a roaring fit of blind fury. She shrieked that every single misery in her life was his fault, proving her ego was as fragile and stupid as ever. Their rematch kicked off, and while I expected a brutal slugfest, he completely dominated the exchange from the opening second. The top-tier geniuses he used to struggle against couldn't hold a candle to his current terrifying pace. Just minutes into the clash, she was drenched in sweat and fighting just to stay alive. She remembered thrashing him easily during their very first encounter, but now she couldn't even find an opening to strike back. He pressed the advantage without breaking a sweat, casually remarking that gifting the fallen angel soul to someone so talentless was an absolute crime. Reader, she did not appreciate being called trash by the guy she was trying to murder. Refusing to believe she was losing, she convinced herself he had to be faking his effortless strength. Panic crept into her chest as she realized her best wasn't even scratching his baseline defense. Deciding to gamble everything, she triggered her ultimate trump card by fusing with the fallen angel soul. Massive obsidian wings sprouted from her back as her magic flared into a blinding, suffocating storm. Sensing the lethal spike in her aura, he calmly activated his dragon transformation without a single trace of panic. He knew better than anyone that rushing a panicked opponent was a rookie mistake you only make once. Laughing off his crude transformation as cheap amateur hour, she launched herself forward with jaw-dropping, instantaneous speed. She crossed the distance in a heartbeat, fully intending to cleave him in two. Their blades violently collided, triggering a hidden passive perk that coated her in a violent, randomized wall of fire. A harsh burning status effect bit deep into her flesh, scorching her armor from the inside out. Thanks to her angelic boost, the lingering burn damage was mercifully halved in duration and intensity. Even so, the sheer agony of the persistent fire nearly forced her to drop her weapon right there on the spot. Capitalizing on the elemental debuff, he rained down relentless fire attacks until she was trapped in an inescapable loop of pure oppression. He thrust his blade straight for her heart, only for her frantic parry to deflect it by a hair. Her arrogant fury completely vanished, replaced by a cold, paralyzing terror as she looked into her opponent's dead-eyed gaze. For the first time, she wasn't thinking about winning. She was terrified that she was about to die. I watched the glowing shields of Sacred Heart flicker and fade into nothingness. Her borrowed angelic magic was finally burning out, and I immediately stopped my onslaught to let the reality of her impending doom sink in. Calling her out with a bitterly condescending sneer pushed her right over the edge. Decades of arrogant pride shattered instantly as a former commoner dared look down on her holy majesty. While her mind was spinning in blind fury, I struck without a single warning. My demonic blade punched straight through her chest, making her whole lower body feel like it was being ripped apart. She stared down at the giant weapon buried in her torso with sheer horror. Reader, she was apparently shocked to discover that actions have consequences when you piss off the wrong guy. Before I could cleave her head clean off, she burned every ounce of remaining power to tear herself free. She threw herself backward and sprinted for her life like a bat out of hell. I didn't panic or rush, just matched her pathetic dash with a cold, determined pursuit. With a wound that massive, she was already bleeding out into the dirt. She desperately yanked potion after potion from her spatial ring, chugging them like a desperate alcoholic at last call. Naturally, it did fuck all to close the gaping hole in her chest. I tossed a bolt of primal fire right into her pathetic little medical supply run. The roaring flames instantly melted her hand to ash and charred the surrounding flesh into a crisp. With the agony peaking, all that divine dignity vanished into thin air. She dropped to her knees and started bawling her eyes out, begging for mercy like a total coward. I stared at her in genuine disbelief as she folded faster than a cheap lawn chair. You don't actually regret your actions, lady. You're just throwing a tantrum because you caught the Grim Reaper's eye. Her magic completely bottomed out, forcefully dropping her out of her fallen angel form. She plummeted toward the earth like a sack of garbage tossed out of a high-rise window. Before I could finish her off, a sudden spine-tingling panic forced me to hurl myself sideways. A massive wall of dark dragon breath scorched the exact air I had occupied a second ago. I spun around to find Augustine riding his scaly mount, looking like an absolute disaster with one missing arm. Ah, right, the brilliant genius who thought assassinating the Pope was a solid career move. The sight of that miserable bastard made my blood boil, and Zelan answered my wrath by ballooning in size. My little snake was now turning a rich, terrifying shade of purple that screamed bad news. Augustine sicked his giant lizard onto us, screaming for our immediate execution. Zelan met the black dragon's fiery blast with a thick cloud of toxic purple mist, turning the sky into a hellish blender. Seeing the black dragon stalemate our advance instantly cured Sacred Heart of her crying fit. The second she thought she was safe, her manic ego flared right back up to annoy us all over again. Augustine looks at Sacred Heart acting like a pathetic lapdog, and then at Crane, who remains totally composed. The vast gulf in talent and temperament makes it glaringly obvious why Crane is the superior choice. Without wasting another breath, Augustine instantly unleashes a 9th-tier Fire Dragon Annihilation spell. The roaring beast of flames streaks forward so fast that dodging is completely out of the question. Crane reacts on pure instinct, bringing his sword down with terrifying force to split the giant fire dragon right down the middle. The cleaved flames incinerate the barren wasteland far behind him. That heavy blast leaves the soul-devouring demon sword glowing white-hot in his grip. Yet Crane remains remarkably unscathed, completely protected by his own masterfully crafted, legendary-grade armor set. Realizing his opponent is tougher than expected, Augustine instantly chains 3 high-tier spells back-to-back. His mana reserves strain heavily as he fights off the dark demonic erosion corrupting his veins. He brilliantly combines a Destruction Tornado with another Fire Dragon spell while tossing in a heavy gravity anchor. The compounded destruction drastically slows Crane down and violently drags him inward. Trapped inside the swirling tempest, Crane feels his body getting battered and scorched from every angle. His legendary armor and absurd physical toughness are the only things keeping him from getting shredded. Seeing her rival caught in the death trap, Sacred Heart starts cackling maniacally like a lunatic. She assumes victory is already hers and that her stolen talent will finally reign supreme. Augustine, already losing his mind from missing an arm and fighting demonic corruption, snaps completely. He roars at the woman to shut her damn trap, finally reaching his absolute limit with her. That single furious roar shatters her entire worldview in a split second. She forgets every single favor he ever did for her, reducing him to just a cranky old man in her bitter, fragile mind. Sensing that Augustine is charging an even deadlier attack, Crane refuses to just sit there and take it. He gathers every ounce of his remaining magic power and unleashes a massive kinetic burst. The sheer recoil blows the raging tornado wide open, giving him the opening he desperately needed. Reader, he did not plan to stick around and wait for the 10th tier spell to finish baking. He scrambles onto the back of the giant purple scale beast and kicks it into high gear to make his escape. The black dragon immediately unfurls its wings and gives frantic chase into the dark. Augustine and Sacred Heart watch with dropped jaws as the residual energy flash practically turns night into day. The sheer magnitude of Crane's counterattack leaves the old master utterly astounded. Watching the swordsman fly away sparks a dangerous new idea in Augustine's head. If he captures Crane and wipes his memory, he'll have a pawn infinitely more useful than that screeching idiot. Let's be real. The old man has absolutely had it with Sacred Heart's endless whining and brainless tantrums. Real masters have unbreakable willpower, and she's just a giant toddler in comparison. Augustine's terrifying mount shadows us from above, refusing to strike directly while treating our desperate flight like a sadistic game of cat and mouse. Knowing a 10th tier spell is coming, I desperately compress my primordial fire into a tiny, ultra-dense blue inferno to match that apocalyptic power. The Dark Dragon unleashes its 10th tier magic, a lightless void that devours all life and sound as it spreads across the battlefield. I throw every ounce of my remaining magic into shielding us, but this abyssal darkness is eating away at my flames piece by piece. Saint Heart watches from afar with a smug grin, entirely confident that no human could possibly survive a true 10th tier spell. 3 minutes later, my reserves run dry, and the darkness strips away my motor control until I'm just a helpless passenger in my own flesh. Augustine smiles from above, genuinely impressed that I managed to drag my corpse this far against a 10th tier onslaught. Before I even realize what's happening, my paralyzed body is standing right in front of the Insect King, completely stripped of free will. The Insect King taunts me about our reunion, before casually demanding I hand over my body like it's a borrowed jacket. Rude as hell. My blonde hair and blue eyes instantly flare scarlet as a monstrous, violent aura violently shoves past my own consciousness. Augustine and Sacred Heart recoil in absolute shock when a second blood-soaked menace emerges from the smoke. My possessed body locks onto Augustine with a terrifying grin. making the Great Lord feel like a gazelle staring down a starving lion. I launch myself forward at high-tier speeds, closing the distance instantly despite Augustine's desperate attempts to react. Augustine is running on fumes and sicks his massive black dragon onto me, because apparently royal wizards love delegation. The dragon's tail whips around with catastrophic force, shattering every single bone in my body and blasting me through a solid mountain face. My shattered limbs stitch themselves back together in seconds thanks to the Insect King's absurd healing factor, leaving Augustine staring in pure disbelief. Recovering his footing, Cran faces the towering black dragon as his attributes visibly surge with terrifying new power. Augustine barks orders, demanding an unrelenting assault to keep the monster from catching its breath. Sensing the beast's sluggish, muscular reaction despite its flight speed, Cran effortlessly sidesteps the ground-shaking stomp. But controlling that mutated body isn't Crane right now. It's the ancient, parasitic Insect King. Whenever an attack manages to connect, the entity's monstrous regenerative powers stitch the flesh right back together in seconds. Augustine watches the unnatural healing with growing alarm, realizing ordinary biology has completely left the chat. Realizing precision strikes won't work, the beast takes to the air and unleashes a wide area firestorm that roasts the entire terrain. Reader, he did not think this through, because trapping a giant bug in an oven is basically just meal prep. Instead of turning to ash, the Insect King retaliates by snapping its jaws wide and swallowing the elemental torrent whole. Augustine stares in absolute disbelief, completely baffled by what kind of twisted freak show he's actually fighting. Even with his vast experience, Augustine can't recognize the bizarre mix of dragon scales and horrific insect parts sprouting everywhere. Still, once he captures the bastard, all these ugly little secrets are bound to come spilling out. Repeatedly battered into the dirt, the parasite's miraculous recovery rate begins to visibly slow down toward the end. Turns out, even an ancient biological horror has a hard limit on how many beatdowns it can bounce back from. The Insect King's face darkens as he realizes he's run into a wall just as monstrous as that wretched woman Elia. He vows bloody vengeance for the past. But right now, staying here means getting turned into paste. Abandoning all pride, the parasite decides survival is the better part of valor and bolts at breakneck speed. Augustine's jaw drops as the target clears 10,000 meters in the blink of an eye, forcing an immediate pursuit. Barking enraged orders, Augustine spurs the giant dragon into a full-speed chase across the blasted terrain. But just as they close the gap, their elusive prey pulls a dirty underground trick. Cran dives headfirst into the earth and tunnels away, his underground velocity multiplying far beyond his surface speed. Augustine stares at the newly dug crater, finally putting the horrific pieces together in his head. The word insect triggers a chilling memory of the Holy Demon Empire's infamous, highly classified Insect King project. If completed, the abomination would have skyrocketed to 9th rank in 2 years, boasting an S+ rating. Cran hadn't just survived, he'd absorbed the legendary Insect King, fusing 2 world-class anomalies into a single overpowered freak. No wonder the kid outpaced every nurtured talent in existence. He's literally walking contraband. Miles away, Elia grits her teeth as her emergency teleportation scroll fails, leaving her to sprint blindly toward Iron City. Praying her companion is still breathing, she pushes her legs past their absolute limits. Back on the surface, the borrowed insect traits finally fade from Cran's body as exhaustion pulls him down like an anchor. Forced out of his tunnel by dragonfire, he hits a brick wall of pure, unadulterated fatigue. Pinned beneath a massive claw, the ancient Insect King thrashes in helpless fury as his bones snap under the pressure. With a final, agonizing roar of pure spite, the entity's doomed existence is crushed into the dirt. The battle finally grinds to a halt as Cran's body completely collapses from sheer exhaustion. A colossal black dragon towers over him, practically salivating at the chance to tear him apart. Augustine barks a single command to stop the slaughter. The lethal beast instantly obeys, lowering its massive head to receive a casual pat from its master. Cast out by its own kind for being an ominous mutation, this dragon barely survived its brutal infancy. Augustine found the dying creature and raised it from the ashes. Sacred Heart loses her mind the moment Augustine spares the target. She throws a massive tantrum, demanding to know why the assassination was suddenly called off. Instead of apologizing, Augustine casually compares her to the Holy Sun, effectively telling her she's completely worthless. She looks ready to combust from pure rage. Half an hour later, Ilya tears across the map at full speed to reach the carnage. The suffocating residual magic in the air tells her everything she needs to know. She finds no body, only a glowing crystal and lingering traces of a high-level superpower's magic. The Holy Demon Empire just declared war on the Holy See. Knowing the late Pope would want her to protect the realm, she swallows her rage and dives into clearing out the surrounding abyss monsters. Meanwhile, Augustine is busy playing art critic in his moving carriage. He gently removes the battered helmet to inspect his prized acquisition. Beneath the grime lies a face so ridiculously symmetrical and striking that it genuinely belongs in a gallery. Honestly, plot armor comes in many forms, but glowing cheekbones is a new one. Sitting across from them, Sacred Heart tries her absolute best to keep her boiling hatred alive. She wants this guy erased from existence more than anything else. Reader, she completely underestimated the sheer power of a 95 charm stat. That is well past the threshold where physics and common sense simply cease to function. She glances over at the sleeping menace and feels her fierce anger instantly evaporate by half. It turns out looking like an absolute snack is the ultimate defensive perp. A profound existential dread washes over her as she questions every life choice. Is she really this painfully shallow? Apparently, yes, she is. Augustine sits across from her, observing the internal panic with an amused little grin. He knows firsthand that nobody stays mad at a pretty face for long. Before he can wipe the guy's memories and tie a neat little bow on this kidnapping, the patient needs to heal. You wouldn't want to damage such pristine canvas with sloppy surgery. Sacred Heart has made peace with Crane's bizarre new face, but she refuses to lower her standards. Falling in love with someone else is far too degrading for a true queen like her. Normally, she is a screaming, raving lunatic, so her sudden quietness throws Augustine completely off. Reader, she was apparently saving up her breath for maximum hostility. Augustine looks at her like a barbarian who suddenly discovered fire. Naturally, this sets off a fresh wave of nuclear-grade rage from the majestic queen. Hearing her drop foul curses somehow reassures Augustine that everything is normal. Nothing beats a good old-fashioned temper tantrum to soothe the soul. On their flight back, the Black Dragon suddenly executes a rapid emergency dive. They spot someone crumpled and half dead on the desolate ground. It is Heisa, left in a horrific near-death state after the brutal battle with the Pope. Even Augustine is genuinely stunned by the sheer carnage of her injuries. Augustine heaves the ruined fighter onto the dragon's back, expecting everyone else from the skirmish to be pushing daisies. The Pope's body count remains undefeated. Heisa snaps back to consciousness just enough to lock eyes with Augustine, then spots a handsome stranger resting nearby and instantly forgets her broken ribs. She wonders if this handsome mystery guy is some secret disciple before blacking out from sheer blood loss. Girl, you are bleeding out. Priorities, please. Half a day later, Augustine watches in pure disbelief as Crane's battered body stitches itself back together. That speed is frankly terrifying for anyone supposedly human. Turns out he's packing 30% Insect King DNA now, after being crushed and regenerated a dozen times. Hard work really does pay off, mostly in gross mutations. Deep inside his seal, the Insect King is having an absolute temper tantrum over getting completely played. He didn't even get any external magic snacks out of the deal. Crane strolls into the mental realm without a single care in the world, taking 0 damage from the boss's rage. Absolute Chad energy right there. The Insect King glares at him with enough pure malice to melt steel. If looks could kill, Crane would be dead a second time. Crane casually ignores the murder threats to wonder aloud about Ilya's whereabouts and church gossip. For fuck's sake, read the room. The bug wants your soul. As the monster screams itself hoarse into the void, Crane simply decides survival is good enough and tunes him out. Reader, he is totally ignoring the red flags. Trapped inside a gloomy prison cell, the enraged Insect King thrashes about and screams bloody murder at his captive. Crane completely tunes out the noise, muttering to himself as his brain races to find logic in this madness. He narrows down his kidnapping to 2 wild theories. heavily leaning toward recruitment because soul swapping usually comes with terrible side effects. Sick of the monster's incessant wailing, Crane bluntly tells the raging creature to shut up and sit quietly in its cell. With a flick of his mental projection, he simply walks away from the tantrum, leaving the beast to rage at thin air. The pathetic bug creature swings at shadows, completely oblivious to the fact that his stunted power growth leaves him totally irrelevant now. While his physical form rests and heals inside the moving transport, his inner consciousness remains completely untroubled. Sensing that the brat might wake up too early on the road to the Holy Demon Empire, Augustine decides to cast a memory-sealing spell. Deep inside Crane's psyche lies an astonishingly rich mental world, filled with floating fish, mermaids, and surreal landscapes. That peaceful sanctuary suddenly grows dark as heavy, malevolent magic starts creeping across the pristine horizon. Crane's mental avatar frowns at the intrusion, instantly recognizing that someone is hacking straight into his personal domain. A towering black cage materializes around the perimeter of his consciousness, effectively cutting off any connection to the outside realm. He reaches out to touch the dark bars and gets zapped for his trouble, realizing brute force would cause permanent brain damage. Instead of a sloppy wipe that would turn him into a total vegetable, whoever is running this operation is using surgical precision. The sorcerer actually went out of his way to seal the whole mindscape instead of frying it, sparing Crane's intellect at a massive energy cost. Reader, he actually gives the guy credit for the extra effort, realizing Augustine might not be such a bad egg after all. Realizing his current mental state is too weak to force a breakthrough, Crane decides to stop fighting back and plays along with the imprisonment. Augustine expected a fierce mental battle, so he is genuinely baffled by how easily the young man surrendered his consciousness to the spell. Little does the captor know, Crane is secretly planning his revenge, fully intending to exploit every single flaw in this sloppy spellwork later. After a full hour of grueling concentration, the exhausted mage finally wraps up the temporary sealing magic and prepares his escape route. Riding his trusty beast, Augustine bolts across the papacy border under the cover of darkness, rushing toward the safety of his home empire. They break through the dimensional barrier and arrive right above the imposing capital city of the Holy Demon Empire in a matter of minutes. While regular beasts are strictly banned from the skies, Augustine treats the city traffic laws like mere suggestions for high-profile VIPs. He touches down at the outer palace gates, immediately demanding a horse-drawn carriage to haul his unconscious cargo deeper inside. With a flick of his wrist, he hoists both Crane and the battered Hysa into the carriage and drives the rig straight into the inner sanctum. In his twisted worldview, humanity is neatly divided into flawless art pieces, pathetic trash, and Hysa who falls somewhere in between. Even a powerhouse like Augustine feels a cold sweat trickle down his spine whenever he has to report directly to his unhinged supreme ruler. He steps inside to find the supreme ruler frozen like a lifeless marble statue, staring blankly ahead without even noticing a guest has arrived. Reader, he wisely decides not to poke the literal God King while his brain is buffering, standing there like a statue until the boss reboots. When the ruler finally blinks and looks down, a wave of sheer terror washes over Augustine, freezing him right to the bone. He delivers his official report, explaining that the Pope is finally dead, though the mission cost them practically every single soldier they brought. When Augustine brags about bagging a holy son with talent surpassing the late Pope, the Emperor's deadpan expression finally cracks into pure shock. Augustine drops by the demon ruler's chamber to brag about their latest heavy hitter. He explains how the supposedly doomed Insect King project actually succeeded in a twisted way. The Holy Demon Emperor perks up when he hears the kid absorb that monstrous entity. It turns out the brat's natural talent already outpaced top-tier geniuses, and this pushes him over the edge. To keep their new weapon controllable, Augustine plans to lock down his memories using a brutal 9-fold sealing magic array. Even the Demon King admits that spell packs enough punch to trap a god. Dismissed by the ruler, Augustine beats a hasty retreat out of the hall. Honestly, the absentee Demon King barely gives a damn about running his empire anyway, leaving everything in the shadows. Over in a cold cell, Crane finally snaps back to consciousness with a fried brain and zero idea who he is. He feels like a complete stranger in his own body, which is a great start to the day. Augustine swoops in like a toxic mentor, warmly greeting the kid and dropping the fake name Ammo on him. Spoiler alert, Crane's gut instinct immediately screams that this guy is full of shit. Instead of crying or buying the lie like an amateur, Crane calls out the glaring holes in Augustine's story. Reader, the amnesiac is far too stubborn to be gaslit this easily. Desperate to cover his tracks, Augustine feeds him a sob story about getting wrecked by Ilya, the Holy See's deadliest enforcer. He claims Crane walked right into a trap and got his skull scrambled. A wave of unprovoked fury surges through Crane at the mention of this mysterious rival. He has to swallow his anger for now since he hasn't got a clue what actually went down. Figuring he has no other choice, Crane decides to test his mojo and starts circulating battle QI. The surrounding magic instantly stampedes toward him like a starving pack of wolves. Augustine watches the insane elemental backlash and nearly wets his pants in shock. The brat hasn't even hit the 9th rank yet, and he's already kicking up a storm that defies all logic. An hour later, Crane snaps out of his trance and blinks up at his supposed teacher like nothing happened. Augustine stammers out some pathetic excuse about running a routine health check.
While his meat puppet body rests, Crane checks his mental interface to see what kind of monster he's evolved into. Name, Kran Gaza. Class, Knight. Level 87. All 4 core attributes have skyrocketed past the ridiculous 10,000 mark. His talents now feature Dragon Transformation, Primal Fire, and a shiny new SS rank Insect Emperor trait fresh off the oven.
With his level shooting up by 2 whole grades and his body evolving past mortal limits, Crane is sitting pretty. Augustine has no fucking clue what a ticking time bomb he just locked away. I sit in the quiet room, running the numbers over in my head. If I wait too long to break this seal, a whole new personality might take root, and knowing my stubborn ass, it'd probably be unbreakable. Before I can lock down a solid timeline for my escape, a sharp knock echoes through the chamber. The aura leaking through the wood isn't Augustine, but it feels every bit as toxic. I invite them in, and a remarkably slender, attractive girl glides right past the doorframe. My stomach immediately turns over with an intense, unprovoked wave of absolute revulsion. Every single person I've encountered since waking up feels deeply wrong. At this point, I'm betting that every single word Augustine fed me was a complete and utter fabrication. She brushes off my silence without missing a beat, sidling right onto the edge of my mattress. She asks if something is bothering me, flashing a grin that doesn't reach her eyes. I feed her the amnesia excuse, claiming I can't dredge up any memories from before. Her lips curl into a knowing smirk because Augustine clearly tipped her off already. She introduces herself as Sheng Xin and claims we were exceptionally close. Her eyes rake over my newly healed, rosy skin, and I can literally hear her swallowing hard at my looks. Reader, I'm holding back the urge to slap this bitch across the face and rip her head clean off. My body is screaming to commit murder, and I honestly have no idea why. She notes my surprisingly fast recovery and starts internally mocking Augustine for pretending to be my teacher. She finds it hilarious that he's hiding how the Black Dragon practically butchered me. Her nasty little expression confirms my worst fears. These people aren't my friends or family. I'm sitting right in the middle of an enemy stronghold, surrounded by vipers. Meanwhile, Augustine is spying on us through a scrying window, sweating bullets as he realizes I'm onto their game. The old bastard knows his lies are about to completely unravel. Before I can map out a proper escape route, Sheng Xin reaches out to stroke my head. My instincts kick in instantly, and I physically jerk away from her touch like she's carrying the plague. Her hand hangs awkwardly in midair, and a massive blue vein pops out on her forehead. Look, lady, maybe don't pet guys who look ready to snap your neck in half. I quickly scramble for an excuse, blaming my skittishness on our undefined relationship. Her anger deflates instantly, replaced by a bizarre, unhinged sort of excitement. She looks me dead in the eye and claims we're actually engaged. Even Augustine, watching through his magic mirror, almost chokes on his own spit at the sheer audacity. Right, because I'd totally choose to get engaged to someone who makes my skin crawl with violent revulsion. Everything coming out of her mouth is a shameless, pathetic lie. The pink-haired girl rushes over to wrap her arms around her supposed fiancé without a second thought, completely ignoring his personal space. She takes whatever she wants like a spoiled child, assuming everyone is just waiting to fall into her lap. A loud slap echoes through the room as Crane delivers a harsh reality check straight to her face. For fuck's sake, read the room before you go hugging strangers who just woke up with total amnesia. Blindsided by the blow, she instantly snaps into a furious rage and throws a punch, but Crane reacts way faster. He slams her face first into the ground under his boot, proving his recovery is entirely complete. He presses down harder, causing the stone beneath her face to fracture like brittle glass under the immense weight. Realizing her skull is about to be crushed into paste, her bravado completely evaporates into pure terror. She begs for her life, scrambles to her feet, and flees the scene with a look of absolute betrayal burning in her eyes. Good riddance, honestly, because she was pushing her luck way too far. Hiding in the shadows, Augustine watches the violent spectacle and breaks out in a cold sweat. He realizes his magical seal is failing to keep this monster under control, and his fake relationship strategy is the only card left to play. The next day, a violent wave of agony crashes over Crane as lost memories tear their way back into his consciousness. 15 minutes of pure hell later, the fog clears entirely, and his true identity snaps back into focus. He has to bite back a laugh, realizing his captors gave him a horribly lazy fake name. Reader, he did not think this through as a clever cover, but he is more than happy to milk their resources dry while planning his revenge. Determined to keep the erratic, pink-haired menace away from his prized asset, Augustine pays another visit to the training room. He hopes to tighten his grip on the boy by showering him with rare and exclusive treasures. Crane adopts an awkwardly obedient tone and addresses the old man as his teacher, playing his assigned role to absolute perfection. Augustine's heart melts instantly at the respectful title, completely unaware he is being played. The elder pulls out a terrifying ninth-tier dark fruit that looks like a lump of scorched coal, humming with ominous elemental energy. It is specifically designed to bypass the limitations of the elemental cultivation manual. Crane stares at the forbidden snack with genuine hunger, feeling the dark power radiating off its surface. For the sake of this overpowered snack, he decides he might just let the old man live a little bit longer. Augustine happily hands over the treasure, promising an endless stream of elite cultivation resources moving forward. He figures the treatment here will easily blow the rival Vatican faction completely out of the water. With a dark grin, Crane accepts the deadly offering while mentally drafting the blueprints for this empire's destruction. Bribery works wonders when you have zero loyalty to begin with. Augustine leaves the room feeling like a master strategist who has successfully secured his ultimate weapon. He is utterly convinced that old ties and dark gifts will keep the monster firmly on his side. Little does the old fool know he is feeding the very beast that will eventually tear his entire empire to shreds. Some bonds are forged in trust, but this one is built entirely on a ticking time bomb. While Augustine steps away, Crane locks himself in a quiet room to begin absorbing the volatile dark fruit. It turns out to be an exhausting endurance test that drags on for weeks. Back in the Vatican, the territory finally purges the last of the terrifying Abyss Eyes, but peace remains entirely out of reach as the region plunges straight into a massive war. The Holy Demon Empire, alongside allied kingdoms, launches a massive coordinated invasion. With the Pope dead, the battered papacy faces an existential test against overwhelming odds. Stepping up as interim leader, Ilia successfully fights off the invaders after losing half their cities to ash. She manages to stabilize what is left, but the heavy toll weighs hard. She faces a brand new nightmare. The devastating forbidden weapon she activated to end the war won't shut down. It's a mindless killing machine targeting anything within 10 kilometers. After 21 grueling days, Crane finally finishes absorbing the fruit, skyrocketing his dark attributes and pushing his personal charm straight to 96. Not bad for a Tuesday. Augustine is thrilled with the rapid growth, but worries that letting Crane wander near familiar places will shatter his amnesia. He needs a brutal crucible far away from civilization. Without missing a beat, Crane agrees instantly to head out for fresh field experience. He has always been a man of action, even when his own past remains a total blank slate. Augustine summons his massive black beast for the trip, which immediately glares at Crane with pure hatred. Seriously, buddy, personal space is a thing. Dial back the murder gaze. With a single stern word from Augustine, the giant dragon drops its hostility and folds instantly. It turns out even scaly apex predators respect a master who carries a bigger stick. Crane mounts the scaly beast, feeling a strange sense of deja vu wash over him as the creature prepares to leap. Reader, he did not pack enough snacks for this flight. The dragon launches into the air, carrying Crane away toward a destination far deadlier than any prison he has visited before. Hold on to your lunch, things are about to get bumpy. When Augustine names their destination, a wave of dark excitement hits Crane square in the chest. He realizes this trip is a golden ticket to supercharge his dormant dragon powers. Dragon Valley isn't the ancient mythical homeland, but a brutal canyon swarming with fierce reptiles and towering drakes. Every single shadow here screams of violent, bloody death. Risk and reward walk hand in hand, and Crane welcomes the lethal danger with open arms. If he has to hunt dragons to evolve his own transformation, he is more than ready to feast. Dropping his pupil off in the jaws of hell, Augustine promises to return in half a year to collect what survives. Let's hope our boy comes back in one piece and not as dragon kibble. Augustine kept a wary eye on the Holy Sun, genuinely spooked by how frictionless the kid seemed. Even deranged geniuses usually had glaring flaws, but Crane was a complete mystery. Before the brooding prince could puzzle it out, they arrived at the legendary Dragon Valley. A bizarre mutated bird came screaming out of the sky, running for its miserable life. The poor beast didn't stand a chance against the oversized lizard acting as their taxi. Bored and annoyed, the black dragon effortlessly tore the flying creature straight in half. After the bloody pit stop, Augustine dumped our boy on a desolate, misty summit and bolted. Reader, he left him stranded in the middle of nowhere without a parachute. Crane didn't mind the isolation one bit, because this valley was practically an all-you-can-eat buffet of dragon essence. If he played his cards right, his primordial fire was going SS tier. Without hesitation, he swan dived off the peak straight into the abyss, because why take the stairs when you can just cause a localized seismic event? He slammed into the valley floor with a deafening crash, leaving a crater big enough to bury a truck. The local fauna gathered around, entirely unaware they were about to become statistics. A dark silhouette vaulted out of the pit and instantly turned the curious onlookers into rolling bowling balls. These creatures had dragon blood, which made them prime targets. A flick of blue flame reduced the piles of fresh carcasses to concentrated essence. He absorbed the glowing residue, feeling his draganification stats tick upward with every kill. Realizing the method actually worked, he launched into a genocidal rampage. By the end of day 1, 600 magical beasts had been wiped off the census. Taking a breather under the moon, he spared a quick thought for his snake buddy Zelin. He hoped the tiny thunder python hadn't been squashed flat during the chaos back home. Down in the valley, the local alpha predator finally noticed its headcount dropping faster than a bad crypto portfolio. Somebody was poaching in its gated community without paying dues. The territorial lord dragged its scaly ass out of bed, seething with ideas on how to painfully torture the little rat who ruined its weekend. Big mistake. Meanwhile, Crane's battery was back at 100% after a 15-minute nap. Time to get back to the grind and commit some more monster slaughter. 27 hours and 900 body bags later, his hunting efficiency hit peak optimization. His dragon transformation potency jumped another 15%. Right as he paused for a breather, the angry territory boss finally caught up to him. Seeing a human this gorgeous made the horny dragon completely forget about revenge. Our giant red dragon spots our hero and immediately mistakes him for a gorgeous snack. Instead of tearing him to shreds, the horny beast wants to pin him down for a completely different kind of action. Cran triggers his dragon transformation, swelling into a terrifying powerhouse that eclipses ordinary foes. Even if he can't win this fight, he figures he's fast enough to bail out when things get hairy. He launches a fiery strike, and to the dragon's absolute shock, it actually burns. This legendary beast literally grew up swimming in molten lava, yet Cran's flames scorch it to the bone. Enraged by the sting, the beast retaliates with a devastating wave of pure dragon breath. The valley turns into a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek with a very angry, very deadly queen. Cran slips away into the complex terrain under the cover of darkness, leaving the queen to trash the valley in a furious tantrum when she realizes her prey vanished. After a day of destruction, a crew of cleanup dragons casually drops rain magic to patch up the ecosystem. Seriously, The local habitat heals faster than a scraped me in a cartoon. He owes his escape entirely to Augustine's dark fruit, which lets him blend into the shadows completely. Even the valley's apex predator couldn't spot him hiding right under her nose. Back in her lava tub, the Red Queen tries to relax, but she can't get her elusive human target out of her head. Turns out dragon royalty likes a little chase every now and then. Instead of playing it safe after a close brush with death, our boy immediately goes on a brutal genocide run. He slaughters over 100 dragonblood creatures every single hour. 3 days later, he runs right into his second dragon, and lightning starts crackling through the air. Lightning and fire? Man, Mother Nature really loves setting up thematic coincidences. Cran triggers an even more advanced dragon transformation, his skin armored in tough scales. He takes one look at his opponent and immediately starts talking trash to its face. He outright refuses to fight what he calls a mere child, elderly citizen, or woman. For fuck's sake, way to poke the hornet's nest with a very literal lightning rod, buddy. Treating a hostile dragon's threats like a cute toddler throwing a tantrum, Cran inspects the beast's impure scales with critical disappointment. Before the poor creature can even process what is happening, Cran closes the distance and plants a devastating punch right in its gut. He follows up with over 100 lightning-fast punches in a single second, completely hammering the beast's thick skull to the brink of ruin. Testing his newfound power to his heart's content, he draws his soul-devouring blade, ignites it with fierce fire, and aims for the neck. Sensing imminent death, the dragon desperately triggers a burst of speed and flees 1,000 meters away, staring back in absolute shock and terror. Cran doesn't bother exchanging pleasantries, closing in instantly to deliver thousands of merciless sword strikes that put the young dragon down for good. With the target eliminated, he wastes no time collecting the warm blood and meat, feeling his entire body violently crave the raw draconic power. Miles away, the sudden death sends shockwaves through the valley, prompting the resident queen to let out a deafening roar that summons an army. For fuck's sake, someone told him there were only a few lizards here, but now over 100 flying meals are practically RSVPing to his dinner party. He chugs down massive gulps of blood and digs into the hot meat, noting that the thunder dragon's flesh literally tingles with spicy electric numbness. As the meal digests, his draconic transformation surges forward by leaps and bounds, bringing him agonizingly close to a full S-rank evolution. Meanwhile, the summoned dragon horde gathers outside the central lair, trembling in absolute obedience and praying they won't trigger their queen's wrath. Heavy footsteps rattle the cavern floor, and every single beast swallows hard as the oppressive aura of the Red Dragon Queen begins to bleed out. Chanelina steps into the light, her massive red frame dwarfing the surrounding followers as she glares down at her terrified subordinates. The gathered dragons instantly flatten themselves against the stone, asking in quivering voices what warrants the Queen's unexpected personal audience. Infuriated by their ignorance, she drops the bomb that a brazen dragon hunter has already infiltrated the valley and murdered one of their own. Panic ripples through the dragon lords when the Red Dragon Queen reveals an intruder is slaughtering their kin. The mighty beasts break out in a cold sweat, realizing they completely missed the assassin in their midst. On her command, a massive swarm of furious dragons floods the valley sky to hunt down the human menace. Their relentless patrols turn the territory into a living nightmare, forcing local beasts to flee for their lives. Hiding in the shadows, Cran smoothly evades the aerial patrols using his dark magic. He treats the massive search party like a minor inconvenience while continuing his hunt for dragon-blooded prey. 20 days pass with zero trace of the human, leaving the landscape looking like a ruined wasteland. The Red Dragon Queen fumes with pure rage, realizing one mortal is causing her entire empire this much grief. 2 months roll by until the entire valley transforms into a lifeless desert waste. Yet the human's lingering aura proves he is still hiding right under their snouts like a venomous snake waiting to strike. With their numbers dwindling to a pathetic 80 and 90% of the monsters wiped out, the Queen reaches her breaking point. She has no clue how to catch a target who fights like a ghost. While they panic, Cran quietly slaughters 2 more half-blood dragons under the cover of darkness. Eating dragon flesh has pushed his transformation ability dangerously close to the absolute peak. Driven completely insane, the remaining dragons spend 7 days bathing the entire valley in destructive breath. They scorch away every ounce of life and magic just to flush out one stubborn guy. The queen watches her gorgeous sanctuary turn into a permanent graveyard of ash and dust. Even if they catch him now, their cherished homeland is utterly ruined beyond any hope of recovery. With the landscape completely flattened, Cran's dark magic cloak finally fails and his cover is blown. But honestly, the guy is grinning from ear to ear after farming this much sweet, sweet EXP.
Name Cran Gaza, Class Knight, Age 17, Level 89. Talents: Dragon Transformation S rank, Attribute Points Allocation SS rank, Primal Fire S rank, Flame Monarch, Insect Emperor SS 30%. Techniques: Thunderclap Sword Technique LV.max, Star Forging Hammer LV.9, Cloud Flash Beast Taming LV.7, Elemental Compendium LV3. Strength 1500, Agility 1500, Constitution 1524, Spirit 14500. Fire Attribute Talent 91, Primordial Fire on the verge of evolving to S+ rank.
Why are these overgrown lizards still lingering in Dragon Valley instead of clearing out? Reader, he did not think this through, but figured a massive gathering like this meant prime loot just waiting to be stolen. Sneaking into the Red Dragon Queen's territory stark naked would be safer than his current stealth attempt. The scorching fire magic nearly fries his dark attributes, but he pushes forward anyway. Miraculously, every single guard lizard is out patrolling elsewhere, leaving the front door completely unguarded. He steps inside the scorching domain, feeling strangely comfortable as the heat rolls over him. An irresistible pull draws him deeper into the subterranean maze. Something down there is calling directly to his core, demanding an immediate and reckless investigation. Right on cue, the Red Dragon Queen slithers back home and catches a whiff of an unwanted guest. She instantly recognizes the foul scent of the rat who dared to violate her sanctuary. Instead of roaring the place down, she condenses her colossal frame into a deadly human form. Scales morph into battle armor, hugging a stunning, domineering red-haired woman. Disguised and blending seamlessly into her own lair's ambient aura, she stalks down the descending corridor. Our genius thief has no fucking clue he's being actively hunted now. He reaches the bottom of the tunnel only to find a bubbling, hyperheated lava lake waiting for him. Since the surface is totally empty, the hidden treasure has to be submerged in the molten rock. Without an ounce of fear, he swan dives straight into the burning molten soup. He figures he can practically take a relaxing bath in liquid fire, completely unaware of the audience. Hidden in the gloom, a pair of crimson eyes watches him take the plunge with sheer malicious glee. She knows the lava is her absolute home turf, and she's ready to spring the trap. She slips into the magma like an apex predator sliding into water, trailing far behind him. She keeps her distance, waiting until they're deep enough that escape is completely impossible. Down they go, plunging a full 1,000 meters into the fiery abyss. The temperature spikes so violently that he becomes dead certain a top-tier supernatural flame is waiting at the very bottom. At 8,000 meters deep, reality comes crashing down in the worst possible way. A delicate hand punches clean through his chest from behind, turning his grand expedition into a nightmare. He whirls around in sheer panic to find the Red Dragon Queen hovering right beside him in human form. The ambush is total, and the fight is about to get violently personal. Seeing the man who devoured her own kind triggers a bottomless well of rage in her chest. She vows to subject him to a slow execution far worse than death itself. Except reality punches her right in the mouth when the brawl actually begins. Despite having home field advantage and an S-rank buff, she can't squash this slippery bastard as easily as she hoped. Trapped in a bubbling subterranean cauldron, I trade blow after relentless blow with the terrifying Red Dragon Queen. My body knits itself back together at a sickening pace, leaving my royal opponent utterly bewildered by my absurd resilience. This demonic blade in my grip is my only ticket out alive. Every strike aims straight for her soul, because a regular flesh wound won't even slow down a beast of her caliber. For 3 grueling days, we tear at each other across the molten expanse. The endless magma feeds our magic endlessly, turning a simple skirmish into a brutal war of attrition. Here is the terrifying part. She is a freak of natural talent who never had to train a day in her life. Yet as we fight, she is rapidly learning how to actually wield her overwhelming power like a true master. My stomach twists as I watch her combat skills spike through the roof. If she fully figures out her own strength, I am completely cooked and won't stand a single chance. I could tap into the Insect King's forbidden power, but let's be real, reader. He did not think this through. That parasite is just waiting for an excuse to steal the wheel and eat my brain. Across the battlefield, the queen's sharp mind is turning just as fast. She notices I am deliberately withholding my sword's true killing blow, and she wants to know why. To flush out my intentions, she pulls a brazen stunt and leaves her entire chest completely wide open. It is a textbook suicide trap designed to trade blows and see who shatters first. Joke's on her because my regeneration makes me an absolute nightmare to put down. I dive straight into her trap without a single second of hesitation. Two sickening crunches echo over the magma as her claws tear through my windpipe while my demon sword sinks hilt deep into her heart. We traded catastrophic wounds in one brutal heartbeat. The agonizing shriek she lets out could shatter glass as my blade literally starts tearing her soul apart. She rips the sword from her chest just in time to save her own life from total annihilation. Meanwhile, my throat is a smoking ruin laced with cursed fire that refuses to heal. For a few agonizing minutes, we both lie paralyzed, gasping for air in mutual devastation. As soon as her vision clears, she throws her head back and lets out a shrill, deafening dragon roar that echoes across the underground sea. My blood runs completely cold as a terrifying chorus of answering roars rumbles through the stone. Reader, she didn't invite me to a fair fight. She called her entire extended family. A literal army of angry dragons floods into the cavern, turning this bad situation into an absolute death sentence. Staying here a second longer means getting roasted and eaten alive. I yank my demonic blade free, scream in frustration, and trigger my insect transformation to blast toward the surface. Time to run like hell and live to fight another day. The pressure comes down on him all at once, like the whole weight of the magma above has decided to lean on his shoulders. He does not need to look back to know why. She has stopped holding back. This is not an attempt to catch him anymore. It is an attempt to slow him down long enough for everything else to arrive. And everything else is arriving. One enormous shape after another comes in through the heat, and with every arrival, the number of ways out of this drops by one. He keeps running anyway, because stopping has never once solved anything, and because some part of him is still doing the arithmetic on a gap that no longer exists. He burns through what he has left. Every technique, every reserve, everything he was saving for a situation exactly like this one. For a moment, it actually works. The cavern lights up white, the shapes above him flinch back, and a gap opens in the ring closing around him. He throws himself into it without hesitating, because a gap like that stays open for about a second and a half. Then Shinalina decides she is finished being patient with him. What comes next is not a technique so much as a statement about the difference between them. The pressure lands and there is simply nowhere left to put his body. He hits the rock hard enough to crater it. That is the fight over, and honestly, it was over several minutes before he was willing to admit it. He still tries to get up. Of course he does. That is the entire problem with him, and everybody in this cavern knows it by now. The circle closes properly this time. No gaps, no angles, no clever exit anybody has overlooked. She comes down to look at him, and she is not gloating. She is checking that he is intact, which tells you a great deal about what she actually wants. He looks up at her and gives her nothing. No pleading, no bargaining, no questions. If she wants something from him, she is going to have to work for it. So they take him, bound, contained, and very deliberately kept in one piece, which is the detail that should worry him most, because nobody goes to this much trouble to capture someone they intend to finish. Whatever they want him for, it starts wherever this road ends, and he is going there whether he likes it or not. Awakening in chains, Crane immediately trades barbs with his captor, the Red Dragon Queen Shanalina. Instead of playing the helpless captive, he openly mocks her species' notorious vices. Shanalina loses her patience with his sharp tongue and delivers a brutal punch to his abdomen. She loves seeing his stoic facade crack under physical agony. She follows up the blow by viciously snapping his collarbone, expecting him to scream. But Crane refuses to yield, staring back at her with pure, unadulterated hatred. Pushed past his breaking point, Crane spits right in her face. Reader, he really did not know how to keep his mouth shut when things were already terrible. For 2 long days, she tries every horrific torture in her arsenal, but Crane's deadpan indifference turns the tables. The torturer is getting madder than the victim. Desperate to crack his spirit, Shanalina switches tactics and aggressively kisses him. To her utter shock, the touch of his warm lips completely derails her. Crane fights back with everything he has, but his sealed magic leaves him completely helpless. Her twisted desire to conquer only spirals further out of control. An hour later, she lounges over him, thoroughly pleased with herself and whispering about sparing his life. She genuinely thinks she's doing him a massive favor. Crane just looks completely hollowed out, finally whispering a flat request for her to end his misery. That lifeless gaze sends her into an absolute rage. This twisted routine drags on for 2 full weeks. She enjoys the humiliation, yet she finds herself strangely obsessed with keeping his pretty face unblemished. Unbeknownst to the proud queen, her daily pampering of her favorite toy has quietly turned into genuine affection. She's completely dependent on him now, and won't admit it. Fed up with the endless degradation, Crane demands to know when she'll finally execute him. Shanalina just flashes a smug smile over her stolen loot. She reminds him that he practically leveled Dragon Valley and slaughtered over 30 of her kin. Dying a quick death is entirely out of the question for someone like him. Day after day, the psychological warfare continues inside the cavernous den. Crane absorbs every ounce of malice she dishes out without breaking character. She paces around him like a caged beast, furious that she still cannot break his iron will. It's almost impressive how stubborn a human can be. No matter what twisted game she plays next, Crane's spirit refuses to truly submit. This toxic dynamic is only just getting started. Locked in this wretched cave, I spend every waking moment treating my dragon captor with unadulterated contempt. She expected me to break under the pressure, but I honestly found her desperate attempts at intimidation hilarious.
Crane's charm attribute has increased by 1 point, reaching an astonishing 97.
When she woke up on the 25th day, a sudden spike in my charm stat completely scrambled her brain. She looked at me like she was seeing a legendary artifact for the very first time, completely mesmerized. My usual death glare used to piss her off, but today she just found my anger insanely attractive. Reader, he did not think this passive-aggressive strategy would work quite this well. She suddenly ditched her aggressive routine and started handling me with kid gloves. Her movements were so bizarrely gentle, I almost laughed out loud at the sudden tonal shift. It didn't take a genius to figure out that my newly boosted looks had completely rewired her predatory instincts. While she fell head over heels, my mind was busy drafting an escape route. Later that night, as she prepared to leave the cell, she caught a glimpse of my miserably huddled form shaking in the shadows. For the first time, a heavy wave of pure guilt hit her square in the chest. Overwhelmed by sudden remorse, she marched back over and tried to pull me to my feet. I immediately yanked my arm away and refused to meet her gaze, leaning hard into the pathetic act. When I kept ignoring her, she cracked my wrist with a sharp squeeze just to snap me out of it. The sudden jolt of pain brought me right back to reality as I glared right back at her. With tears welling up in my eyes, I put on a masterclass in looking thoroughly conquered and utterly broken. She fell for the performance hook, line, and sinker. Smug and completely full of herself, she offered to unlock my chains if I simply agreed to obey her every command. She really thought she had completely broken my indomitable spirit. I put on a painfully long display of inner turmoil before finally giving her a reluctant nod of submission. Honestly, 16 days of misery and the woman acts like she just conquered a kingdom. She grinned from ear to ear, assuming human willpower was absolute garbage. She demanded I drop to my knees and address her as her loyal master right then and there. When I stalled for a solid quarter of an hour just to mess with her head, her patience finally evaporated completely. For fuck's sake, play along for 5 more minutes and break her brain entirely. Tired of my hesitation, she slammed me right back onto the stone floor with brute force to remind me who was boss. The next morning, she happily spooned me like a giant, content teddy bear while I lay there totally wide awake. Little does she know the helpless prisoner is having the absolute time of his life. Imprisoned and worn down by daily torment, Crane meets the Red Dragon Queen's harsh threats with a chillingly defiant refusal to bow. To her absolute bewilderment, the broken prisoner suddenly erupts into genuine, mocking laughter right in the middle of her interrogation. Instead of flying into a rage, the mighty ruler finds herself strangely captivated by his arrogant expression, mesmerized by his defiance. He coolly informs her that he's immune to her games because she has secretly fallen in love with him, completely freezing her in place. Outraged pride flares in her chest, reminding her that she is a terrifying dragon queen, while he is merely a captive hunter meant to suffer. Refusing to back down, Crane abruptly closes the distance and kisses her, turning the tables with a shockingly proactive move. Reader, she did not punch him through a wall. Instead, she stood there absolutely stunned and secretly loving every second of it. Beneath his bold front, his trembling legs and fidgeting hands betray the terrifying truth that he is utterly terrified of her. Spotting the subtle physical tells of his nervousness, the clever queen instantly concludes that his entire speech was just a bluff. Convinced he's just trying to provoke a swift death, she calls his bluff and challenges him to actually back up his words right now. Caught in his own trap, Crane panics for a split second before forcing himself forward to keep up the charade. His clumsy, uncoordinated fumbling makes it painfully obvious that he has absolutely no idea what he is doing. After a few agonizing minutes, he breaks away entirely and retreats into a dark corner to nurse his wounded dignity. Watching him cower like a defeated animal fills her with sudden amusement, finding his human antics utterly adorable. Deciding to up the ante, she casually shatters the heavy iron chains binding his limbs, granting him complete physical freedom. He stares in horror as she threatens to parade his failure before all the dragons if he doesn't continue, instantly draining all the color from his face. Facing ultimate humiliation, our captive hero tries to hide his panic while the Red Dragon Queen corners him with a sickeningly sweet grin. She threatens to drag him outside and put on a public spectacle if he refuses to surrender completely. Fed up with the endless mind games, he snaps and throws a lightning-fast punch straight for her heart. It's a killer blow normally, but the mighty dragon monarch casually snatches his fist out of the air like it is nothing. She mocks his pathetic human frailties, sneering that true apex predators don't even need magic to dominate. To break his spirit for good, she ruthlessly strips away his clothes right there on the spot. She yanks him toward the mouth of the lair, forcing him to face the blinding sunlight he used to crave. The thought of being exposed like this to the rest of the horde fills him with pure dread. Realizing he has 0 cards left to play, his resistance finally shatters completely. He breaks down, drops to his knees, and obeys her demands just to avoid the unbearable public shame. Cut to a month later, and the landscape has undergone a massive glow-up. Thanks to the dragon's magic, the once-dead valley is now thriving with lush greenery and vibrant life all around. Our boy is moving around the lair freely now, playing the part of the dutiful, submissive servant to absolute perfection. Chanelina is living her absolute best life, completely buying his total act of surrender. She even brags about his striking looks, asking if she should hunt down more humans just to keep him entertained. Reader, the man plays his part so well he deserves an actual Oscar for this performance. He feeds right into her massive ego by telling her he is basically the most attractive human alive. That stroke of flattery sends her into a fit of maniacal laughter, completely convinced she struck gold. While the queen basks in her own brilliance, an uninvited guest slips quietly into Dragon Valley. This sneaky little intruder has the exact same greedy idea he did, looting the queen's massive treasure hoard. The newcomer plays it smart, stopping right at the threshold of the underground volcano. They know charging blindly into the Red Dragon Queen's domain is a great way to get trapped like a rat in a cage. Back inside the nest, Chanelina's eyes snap wide open as she senses an uninvited ripple in her territory. Her predator instincts flare up instantly, cutting her nap short. Sensing his master stir, our supposedly broken hero wakes up right beside her without missing a beat. He smoothly drops back into obedient servant mode faster than you can say plot twist. She casually informs him that another little mouse has wandered into their trap. She thinks he is about to get a brand new roommate to boss around. Inside his head, the wheels are turning at 1,000,000 miles an hour. This unexpected arrival might just be the golden ticket he needs to break free without waiting for backup. She pinches his cheek affectionately, slaps heavy security chains on him just to be safe, and struts off to deal with the intruder. Little does she know, she is walking right into her own downfall. Struggling against his magical bindings, Crane quickly realized that escaping without outside assistance was going to be an absolute nightmare. But he remembered the Soul Eater sword resting just across the cavern and hatched a risky plan to break free. He began grinding away at Chanelina's complex seal, forcing his energy against the heavy magic holding it together. 15 agonizing minutes later, he felt the heavy barriers finally begin to shudder and crack under his relentless assault. Reader, he had the good sense to stop before blowing the whole operation wide open. Pushing any further would have instantly pinged the Red Dragon's radar, so he wisely tucked his tail back in and paused his breakout. Far away in the vast territory, another intruder was busy plotting her stealthy moves when a sudden drop in temperature sent shivers down her spine. Looking up, she locked eyes with the legendary Red Dragon Queen hovering above. Chanelina curled her lips into a vicious grin, thoroughly amused by the sheer terror gripping the interloper. She smugly pointed out that her perimeter magic circles caught the rat the exact second she stepped foot into the valley. With a single earth-shattering dragon roar, she summoned an entire welcoming committee of giant beasts from every corner of the valley. Dozens of heavy apex predator auras converged on the canyon, completely sealing off all exits. Realizing she was severely outgunned by an army of flying death lizards, the intruder immediately tried to bolt for the hills. Facing one angry dragon queen is a headache. Facing 50 of them is an express ticket to the afterlife. Chanelina laughed at the pathetic escape attempt and casually unleashed her 10-kilometer territory domain. The entire landscape instantly morphed into a bubbling sea of magma that choked out every element except blistering fire. The superheated air and toxic volcanic gases immediately began searing the lungs of anyone foolish enough to breathe them in. It was a suffocating pressure cooker designed to bake intruders alive before they could even draw their weapons. Before she could cross the boundary, blazing dragon-forged chains lashed out from the dirt and pinned her limbs straight to the rock. She was locked down tight, completely immobilized by the supreme elemental pressure. But this trespasser wasn't about to go down without showing some terrifying tricks of her own. Scales ripped across her skin as she triggered a brutal draganification technique, instantly shattering multiple heavy chains with raw physical might. Chanelina narrowed her eyes in sudden realization as she watched the strange transformation take hold. This wasn't the crude, flesh-eating magic of a typical dragon hunter, but something far more structured and ancient. Recognizing the distinct combat style, the Red Dragon Queen sharply asked if her captive belonged to the infamous human faction that breeds dragon alliances. The masked intruder stopped struggling, knowing her cover was completely blown. Long ago, the Divine Dragon Empire and the Dragon clans maintained a fiercely loyal and respectful partnership built on shared contracts. But greedy descendants corrupted those bonds over generations, turning noble beasts into abused slaves. Admitting her heritage without hesitation, the woman claimed she only wanted to forge a peaceful partnership with a dragon. Naturally, that was a complete load of horse piss meant to hide her true, far greedier motives. She wasn't looking for a buddy, she was hunting the legendary Dragon Emperor's heart hidden deep within this very valley. Stealing that supreme artifact was her only ticket to breaking past her limits and achieving double S-rank power. Trapped by glowing dragon chains, the mysterious intruder realizes her time is running out. She knows the Red Dragon Queen's allies are closing in fast. Just in time, a gigantic azure dragon arrives to reinforce the Red Dragon Queen. The intruder instantly knows she has run out of peaceful options. Pushed to the brink, she unleashes her forbidden second dragon transformation. This horrifying technique lets her devour her own bonded dragon for absolute power. She violently shatters the restraints and dwarfs the Red Dragon Queen's aura. But instead of fighting, she instantly turns tail and bolts away. Chanelina searches the devastated valley for hours, but the thief has already vanished without a trace. For fuck's sake, she literally just rebuilt this place. Furious and needing a target for her misplaced anger, the queen storms straight back to her den. She spots Cran waiting there and immediately pounces. She violently tears off his bindings and grips his wrists, making it crystal clear she intends to use him as her emotional punching bag. Cran tries to put up a token resistance, but she completely ignores him. Honestly, the man is just deeply exhausted by her terrible technique. 2 hours later, Cran passes out from sheer exhaustion, only for her to rudely wake him back up. Her stats are top tier, but her execution is pure trash. By evening, the Dragon Queen finally burns through her frustration and calms down. She looks at Cran and wishes every human was this convenient. Meanwhile, the fleeing intruder fully recovers her strength by slaughtering another dragon miles away. Talk about adding insult to injury. The moment the dragon dies, Chanelina senses the disturbance across the territory. Her eyes snap open with pure venom. She realizes the intruder's newest crime is a direct insult to her pride. The thief outside has officially crossed a line that cannot be ignored. She hastily throws the heavy chains back onto Cran with brutal roughness. Reader, he instantly realizes his little break is officially over. Cran drops his act and stares up at her wide-eyed as the sheer weight of her wrath presses down on him. The outside thief has completely ruined his peaceful captivity. With a savage roar, Chanelina abandons her den to chase down the audacious pest once and for all. Nobody slaughters her clan and gets away with it. Furious that her meal ticket is slipping away, Chanelina drags Crane by the ankle off her makeshift bed and locks him away in a dark corner of the den. She grabs his chin and forcefully snaps the bone with a sickening crack, sneering that the gruesome injury suits his pathetic face much better. As the unbothered dragon storms off to defend her horde, Crane rolls his eyes while his broken jaw magically heals itself back into place. Deep in his subconscious, the arrogant insect king cackles with glee, thrilled that Crane has finally met his match and suffered a crushing defeat. Instead of crushing the pest entirely, Crane decides to let the parasite grow stronger to maximize his own stat gains later. Reader, he is playing a very dangerous game. Meanwhile, an unknown female infiltrator seizes the moment, sneaking past the dragon's outer defenses while the beast is distracted outside. She creeps deep into the palace, blinking in utter disbelief when she finds a surprisingly cozy human-style bedroom tucked inside the monster's domain. Her search is abruptly interrupted by a sharp voice echoing from the shadows, warning her that she has stumbled straight into the dragon's clutches. She spins around to find a breathtaking, porcelain-skinned youth shackled to the wall, looking like a fallen angel trapped in a nightmare. Crane glares irritably at the woman as she unashamedly checks him out, asking if she's quite done gawking at his miserable predicament. "Snap out of it, soldier!" She shakes her head to clear the distraction, figuring he is just another poor captive of the deranged Red Dragon Queen. Ignoring his pleas entirely, the busy intruder marches right past him and continues ransacking the chamber without a second glance. "Hey, hello?" Crane yells that leaving him behind is a terrible tactical error, but she coldly dismisses him as a useless, pretty boy liability. Never mind that he's currently playing damsel in distress. A bit of shameless self-promotion helps when you are trying to talk someone into a rescue. She stops dead in her tracks when he drops his true identity, revealing himself as the former holy son of the Divine Dragon Empire. Though she never met him during her days of secluded training, the legendary tales of his divine beauty and unmatched forging talents instantly flood her mind. After sizing up the situation, our mysterious lady realizes springing the captive lunatic is her best ticket out of here alive. The prisoner calmly explains that his magic seal is already broken, and sends her off to hunt down his missing weapon. She follows his directions straight to a heavily fortified vault door that blocks her path to the loot. Brute force does the trick, and she strains every muscle until the heavy metallic barrier finally groans and yields. The second she slips inside, the heavy portal slams shut behind her, locking her in with whatever lies waiting in the dark. She finds herself standing inside a ridiculous mountain of pure gold and glittering treasures, though she keeps her eyes on the prize. Tucked away in the corner sits a wicked blade leaking sinister black aura that makes the air itself feel heavy. Ignoring the blaring warning bells in her head, she marches right up and grabs the hilt of the cursed weapon. Dark energy snakes up her arm, plunging her mind straight into a nightmarish vision filled with screaming souls and blood-red skies. She snaps back to reality soaked in cold sweat, realizing this horrifying murder weapon belongs to a supposed holy son. The cursed blade practically hums with joy the moment it gets close to its scruffy owner. With a single swing of the glowing sword, She slices through the unbreakable shackles like they were made of wet cardboard. Now entirely free, our golden boy realizes running around in rags is a terrible look and begs for a change of clothes. She tosses him some flashy gemstone-studded apparel she looted from the vault, because apparently dungeon escapees have a runway to catch. Reader, he actually pulls the tacky look off, rocking the stolen finery like an absolute prince. As a parting gift for saving his ass, he hands over a rare, high-grade molted snake scale from his personal stash. Crane hands the woman a glowing reptile scale, promising his full backing if she ever finds herself in trouble down the line. Realizing she has partnered with someone who actually repays favors, she breathes a sigh of relief and agrees to press forward. The pair step into the dragon's cavernous vault, greeted by mountains of gleaming gold and legendary artifacts. Crane wastes no time raiding the hoard, piling on magical storage rings and necklaces until he looks like a walking jewelry store. She warns him that all these valuables reek of the Red Dragon Queen's scent, meaning a fiery tracker is bound to follow their trail. Crane shrugs off the danger since they're already enemies, refusing to let a little dragon perfume slow down his looting spree. Instead of stopping at the vault, Crane leads his companion deeper underground toward an intense, pulsing heat source. They arrive at the edge of a bubbling lava lake, where the air shimmers from temperatures that would melt ordinary steel. Without missing a beat, Crane swan dives straight into the molten rock, because normal rules simply do not apply to this guy. Not wanting to get charbroiled, his companion wraps herself in defensive magic before plunging into the fiery depths right behind him. High above, the Red Dragon Queen and her squad hunt a decoy figure, rushing blindly in the wrong direction. A sudden knot of dread hits the queen as she realizes her nest is completely unguarded, but she quickly shakes it off as paranoia. Back underground, the divers plunge 10,000 meters down through the magma, closing in on the lake's scorching floor. A legendary crimson dragon flame comes into view at the very bottom, radiating an aura of absolute elemental supremacy. To the woman's utter shock, the wild extraordinary flame happily wraps around Crane's hand and merges directly into his body. Realizing the treasure she needed isn't here, she prepares to surface, leaving Crane to finish absorbing his fiery prize. Just as my companion attempts to swim back up to safety, I catch her by the ankle. My instincts are screaming at me that there is something hidden down in the depths. We immediately dive down to the lake bed and start tearing into the solid stone barrier. Guided purely by my gut feeling, I swing my blade hard against the stubborn rock. With one final vicious thrust, a web of fractures tears across the obsidian floor. The entire layer collapses downward, revealing a massive hidden void beneath. An entire ocean of molten lava hangs suspended overhead like a glowing ceiling, defying gravity. A violent shockwave ripples outward through the entire Dragon Valley. Dropping into the hidden chamber, we are instantly hit by a suffocating wave of pure magical energy. The ambient power here is 100 times denser than the outside world. She turns to me with her weapon half drawn, completely ready to throw down. She figures I'm about to turn greedy and try to steal whatever legendary prize lies buried here. To her utter shock, I tell her to keep it. A deal's a deal, and I'm not about to break my word after she saved my skin back there. The absurd concentration of magic plays tricks on my senses, throwing off my perception completely. Thick white fog rolls in, blinding us to mere feet ahead. Miles away, Chanelina realizes she's been played for a fool by a decoy. With wide, bloodshot eyes and blazing rage, she turns around and sprints back toward the valley. Turns out my companion isn't just some random survivor either. She's a terrifying anomaly who has successfully devoured and mastered 7 distinct dragon talents. Back in the vault, we tear through the glowing terrain looking for the prize. Reader, she didn't realize the terrifying monster hunting us was already halfway back. She suddenly stops, her face draining of color as her decoy illusion finally shatters miles away. She warns me that the real dragons could drop on our heads at any second. Panic starts creeping in as our search turns up absolutely nothing. For fuck's sake, we're stumbling around blind in a magic soup with 0 clues. The thick fog reduces our visibility to a measly 5 meters. Every direction looks identical, and the oppressive atmosphere weighs heavy on our chests. Even with the constant danger of getting hopelessly lost, we pick up the pace to claw back some time. The hanging lava ceiling eventually vanishes behind us in the mist. We push deeper into the suffocating haze, racing against the clock that's about to run out. If Chanelina catches us down here, this treasure won't even matter. To keep from getting separated in the blinding, suffocating fog, Crane grabs the woman's hand and holds on tight. A rope would just snap if some random nightmare ambushed them out here. After wandering blind for ages, they stumble across a massive hole carved into a sheer stone wall. It's a total toss-up whether finding this creepy cave entrance is lucky or a death sentence. Without any other realistic choices left, the pair grit their teeth and step right into the gloom. Little do they know, this tunnel is just one of 81 identical traps waiting underground. Crane tries to light the way with a fireball, but the dark energy here is so thick it literally devours the light. Reader, he did not think this through. The fire is completely useless. Meanwhile, the furious Dragon Queen Shinalina finally storms back to her lair with her retinue. Seeing those broken chains on the ground instantly pushes her boiling anger over the edge. Following the lingering magic straight to her treasure vault, she leads her crew straight down into a bubbling lava lake. They dive right into the molten soup to reach the hidden sublayer. Bursting through the shattered obsidian barrier at the bottom, Chanelina spots the strange mist below. Knowing the intruders will eventually reach the end, she charges straight ahead. She blazes a trail to the labyrinth's absolute core in record time, bringing her dragons right to a massive egg covered in crimson scales. That magical signature is unmistakable. When one of the dragons tentatively asks whose egg this is, Chanelina softens up and drops a bombshell. She calmly explains that this massive, unhatched thing is actually her sister. Yeah, wrap your head around that centuries-old family dynamic. Naturally, when the queen snaps that some things aren't up for questioning, nobody dares ask a single follow-up. Back in the tunnels, Crane is somehow jogging through the pitch black like he owns the place. The ambient dark magic is literally steering his feet now, and he's adapting way too fast. As for his terrified companion, she's completely turned around and has to cling to Crane for dear life. She's basically luggage at this point, relying entirely on his supernatural instincts. Right in the middle of their stride, Crane slams to a dead stop. Something wicked this way comes, and you can practically taste the sudden spike of adrenaline in the dead air. The woman feels the suffocating wave of a heavy death crisis wash over her, and instinctively burrows behind Crane. She can't see shit, but her survival instincts are screaming. Thanks to his dark talent, Crane tracks the movement of a purely formless shadow gliding through the void. It has no physical body, but the killing intent is crystal clear. Not waiting to see what the faceless creep wants, Crane unleashes the soul-devouring demon sword in a devastating slash. Let's see how this shadow handles a blade to the face. Kellen swings his blade, slicing a creepy shadow cleanly in half, but the spooky ghost-like entity refuses to stay dead or even bleed. Instead of backing off, the enraged entity expands and swarms them. Luckily, dark magic keeps its biting attacks at bay for now. Every time he counters, the water-like shadow matches his strength, dragging out a grueling stalemate that drains his stamina. Reader, he quickly realizes that playing tag with a ghost is a massive waste of time when an angry red dragon is hunting him. Deciding he's done playing, he grabs his companion and bolts, barely keeping ahead of the relentlessly pursuing Shadow Horde. Meanwhile, Chanelina and the other dragons wait impatiently by the exit, wondering why our runaway duo is taking so long. Chanelina shrugs off the delay, explaining that those clumsy shadows are more of an annoying mosquito bite than a real threat. Suddenly, two figures burst out of the tunnel exit, instantly capturing the intense, burning gazes of every dragon in the room. Chanelina locks eyes with their clasped hands, and you can practically see the smoke coming out of her ears. That's her property they're holding. Sensing a murderously jealous dragon incoming, Kellen quickly whispers a desperate acting plan to his companion, begging for her cooperation. Chanelina demands an immediate explanation for this blatant betrayal, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly deep register. Instead of apologizing, Kellen leans right against the woman's shoulder and trash talks Chanelina. Oh, for fuck's sake, he chose violence. Beneath her veil, the woman's face goes beet red as her heart hammers against her ribs from the sudden, scandalous physical contact. Chanelina snaps completely, unleashing a tidal wave of scorching fire that instantly transforms the entire chamber into an absolute inferno. Fortunately, thanks to the dragon flame he just absorbed, the intense heat rolls off Kellen like a warm bath instead of roasting him alive. With the fiery tantrum finally handled, Kellen spots the empty dragon nest and wonders where the Supreme Clan treasure disappeared to. This massive chamber is about to turn into a bloodbath, and she refuses to let her unborn sister get caught in the deadly crossfire of this war. Shanaelina corners Cran with an ultimatum, offering to wipe the slate clean if he just hands over the supreme treasure without a fight. Instead of striking him down immediately, she hesitates as memories of their time together soften her anger, sparing him from death. Refusing to cripple the handsome lad because it would ruin his looks, she orders her 6 dragon retainers to surround the battlefield and take action. Tracy finds herself completely surrounded by 6 terrifying dragons, forced to unleash her own dragon transformation just to stay alive. The magic density here is 1,000 times that of the outside world, creating a suffocating pressure that makes normal spell absorption nearly impossible. Shanaelina wastes no time showing the price of betrayal, instantly unleashing a blistering fire dragon domain that turns the arena into an inferno. She follows up with a roaring wave of dragon breath that floods the entire space, leaving zero room for escape. Refusing to get vaporized, Cran unleashes thousands of razor-sharp slashes in a single second to carve a path straight through the inferno. Before he can catch his breath, Shanaelina closes the distance in a flash and brings a devastating axe kick crashing down onto his head. She spins instantly, lashing out with a hardened dragon tail that hits him like a freight train and sends him hurtling into the stone wall. Refusing to just take a beating, Cran absorbs 1,000 incoming punches head-on and rams his soul-devouring sword straight into her gut. Shanaelina lets out a blood-curdling scream as her very soul gets ripped apart by the cursed blade, forcing her to scramble backward in pure terror. The two trade blows in a brutal deadlock, but Cran notices a terrifying problem. Her strength is rapidly scaling up mid-fight. Across the room, Tracy stares at her 6 dragon opponents in sheer despair, realizing her trump card has a strict ticking clock. A fresh collision sends Cran crashing into a wall near a hidden hole, drawing a sharp reaction from Shanaelina right as the assault continues. Shanaelina delivers a vicious strike that sends Cran flying backward, confirming his suspicions that something crucial is hidden deep inside the cave. Hearing the clue, Tracy triggers her second dragon transformation, swelling in size and easily brushing past the lesser beasts guarding the path. Shanaelina shifts back into her original colossal form, planting her massive body squarely in the tunnel opening to block all access. Tracy reaches out with a razor claw, meeting Shanaelina's defensive swipe head-on with an impact that visibly warps the fabric of space. Cran leaps into the fray right behind her, expertly carving a path through 6 furious dragons to buy his partner precious time. Channeling primal fire and crimson dragon flames straight into his demon blade, Cran boosts his offensive power to terrifying new heights. While the massive beast matches Tracy in raw strength, her superior agility lets her dance around it and rack up painful claw gashes. Blinded by rage and battered by the cuts, Shanaelina gets violently tossed aside as Tracy slips past her and plunges into the tunnel. Inside the dim cavern, Tracy's hands brush against a massive scale-covered object before she triumphantly hoists a glowing dragon egg into the air. The moment she carries the prize out into the open, every surrounding dragon freezes dead in their tracks, their combat instincts instantly dying. Cran inspects the massive egg, realizing the terrifying magic aura was coming from it, and quickly passes it off as the burning heat becomes unbearable. Shanaelina drops her hostile stance just enough to beg for the return of her sister, offering safe passage out of the cavern in exchange. Cran squints at the scorching egg, realizing with a sudden jolt of intuition that there is definitely something else hidden alive inside it alongside the cub. They whisper back and forth on whether to cut their losses and hand the egg back, or hold onto it as heavy leverage against the beasts. Shanaelina overhears their plot and snaps that the egg relies entirely on its specialized subterranean greenhouse to survive transport. The color drains from their faces as they realize they are completely trapped between a lethal dragon swarm and a fragile egg they dare not break. Oh, brilliant planning, truly. Trapped by necessity, the Red Dragon Queen desperately swears on her life to halt her pursuit for 3 days if they spare her sister. Crane listens to the dramatic pledge with utter disbelief, knowing how rarely creatures of her caliber throw around oaths. Refusing to back down easily, Tracy demands a supreme dragon treasure as the absolute price for the fragile egg. The furious queen desperately wants to obliterate the pair right then and there, but the hostage in their hands forces her to stay her hand. Tracy starts to wonder if their intelligence was flawed, realizing this might just be a random settlement rather than the true Dragon Valley. Backing herself into a corner, she fires back a fierce warning that any theft will bring eternal war from the entire dragon race. Crane weighs the looming threat against his own secret identity, realizing a renewed war could expose his ties to the Holy See. His sharp intuition tells him this isn't just an ordinary dragon cub resting inside the shell, but something far more valuable. The queen's sudden, undeniable panic gives her away completely, proving to Crane that a massive secret is hidden inside. Seeing the obvious terror on the dragon's face, Tracy seriously weighs the chaotic option of just destroying the egg right then and there. Ultimately deciding against courting disaster, Tracy pulls back from the brink of destruction and settles for a safer bargain. Surrounding dragons bare their teeth in furious protest, hating the idea of letting the intruders walk away unpunished after all the destruction. Gritting her teeth against the humiliation, the queen finally nods in bitter surrender to protect the life trapped inside the shell. Before handing the prize back, Tracy slaps a volatile magical crystal onto the egg as a ruthless insurance policy. Furious beyond words at the blatant disrespect, the queen can only watch helplessly as her leverage is rigged to blow. With the egg secured and the trap set, the duo turns tail and bolts into the dark tunnel, leaving a boiling horde behind them. That relentless shadow from the depths was back, tracking our duo through the winding tunnels. We had to sprint like our lives depended on it, shaving our escape time down to a frantic 20 minutes. We burst out of that fiery prison, cleared the bubbling lava lake in a single desperate bound, and finally breached the surface world back into the open air. Queen Chanelina shot down her captain's hesitation with ice-cold fury. She swore absolute vengeance against the Divine Dragon Empire and everyone who had crossed her today. The lackey bowed low in immediate submission, hiding a deep, festering resentment in the corner of his eye. Nobody makes a fool of royalty and walks away smiling. Crane and Tracy bolted from the terrifying depths of Dragon Valley without a single pause. We ran for a full 24 hours straight just to put some distance between us and that nightmare. Catching her breath on the trail, Tracy realized it was time to part ways. Crane gave her a fake alias for the Holy Demon Empire, ready to vanish back into the shadows. She dropped her own real title right back at him, revealing herself as the first princess of the Divine Dragon Empire. Reader, he did not expect to be chatting up royalty. With a quick nod, Crane walked off down the road without looking back. Tracy stood there frozen, staring at his retreating silhouette and deeply regretting that the trip had to end. Crane skipped the Holy City entirely and set his sights straight on the Holy Demon Empire. Since they had it coming, I was more than happy to turn their whole world upside down. Back in his lab, Augustine was elbow deep in mad science trying to engineer the ultimate replacement arm. 4 months of grueling work and the old bastard was finally onto something brilliant. A familiar voice sliced through the quiet hum of machinery. Augustine whipped around, dropping his tools in absolute disbelief as Crane walked right back through the door. I gave him the short version of my fiery misadventures in the Dragon's Nest. Naturally, the old man was floored to hear we had declared total war on the Red Dragon Queen. He waved me off to go rest, but suspicion gnawed at his gut like a starved hound. The teacher couldn't shake the nagging fear that his prized pupil had finally recovered his stolen memories. Locking myself away in my private chamber, I immediately unleashed my primal fire to consume that massive crimson dragon flame. That concentrated heat felt like swallowing a brand new sun. For half a month straight, I sat there in total isolation, wrestling with that overwhelming, volatile energy. Absorbing power like that is never a walk in the park, but patience pays off. When those heavy doors finally creaked open after 15 long days, a terrifying new strength pulsed through my veins. The Holy Demon Empire had better brace itself for what was coming. Swallowing the Crimson Dragon Flame whole pushed my body past its final limit. Breaking into level 90 catapulted me right into the upper echelon of the world's most terrifying powerhouses.
Name, Kran Gaza, Class, Knight, Age 17, Level 90. Talents, Dragon Transformation, Attribute Points Allocation, Primal Fire, Flame Monarch, and Insect Emperor. Cultivation techniques maxed out, with elemental attribute investments heavily skewed toward wild, destructive magic. Four-dimensional attributes: Strength 24,000, Agility 24x00, Constitution 24x, Spirit 24W. Additional attributes include a massive lifespan boost of 3,000 years and diverse mastery talents.
Over in the Holy Empire, the ruling monarch listens with a deep scowl as the acting pope pitches a desperate military alliance. Ilya lays her cards on the table, warning that the Holy Demon Empire's ruthless ambitions will soon threaten every nation on the continent. Sensing leverage, the king plays hardball and questions why his massive empire should risk getting dragged into her personal war. Driven by sheer hatred, Ilya offers absurd territorial concessions and a 10-year trade tax exemption to secure her revenge. With the deal struck, the unholy alliance is locked in, and the war machine of the Holy Empire begins to turn. Returning to my master Augustine, the old man immediately notices the terrifying shift in my aura and raw strength. Augustine brushes off the looming threat of the Red Dragon Queen, confident that our forces can easily handle any winged lizards. Then the old bastard drops a total flashbang into our chat by casually suggesting I settle down and get married right this second. Reader, he did not consult my calendar. He wants to lock me into the Empire with a wife and kids so I never turn my back on them. Smooth move, teacher, turning family planning into a hostage situation. Augustine drops a bombshell on me, casually deciding my marital future without my permission. I try to push back, but my teacher refuses to back down an inch. He tries to sweeten the deal by reassuring me that my mystery bride isn't the one person I loathe above all others. Honestly, that's a relief, but I'm still deeply suspicious. Apparently, we've met before, and she practically begged to be my wife. Reader, my memory is completely shot, so that narrows it down to absolutely nowhere. At this point, I don't even care. If marrying some stranger gives me the leverage to wipe out the Holy Demon Empire, I'll sign the papers today. Back in my quarters, I throw myself right back into grinding my cultivation. My elemental compendium is buzzing, and level 4 is just days away. Leaving me to my training, Augustine hurries off to brief the real mastermind behind this madness. He steps into a heavily guarded palace where a dangerous figure heals in glowing waters. Heisa glares up from the Holy Demon Spring, her brutal injuries slowly mending after her clash with the Pope. When Augustine brings up my name, a wicked little smirk crosses her face. She demands an immediate audience with me, refusing to let such a rare prize slip through her fingers. She wants me locked down as her personal property. Consequences be damned. Barely giving me time to break a sweat, Augustine is banging on my door again. Apparently, my eager fiancé wants a face-to-face meeting right this second. I just saw the guy 5 minutes ago, but off we go to meet my mysterious bride. I'm bracing myself for a royal princess, a freakish genius, or some ancient, terrifying hag. We pull up to an absolute fortress of a castle right in the heart of the city. The sheer scale of this place tells me my future wife commands terrifying amounts of power. Inside her eerie hall, Heisa starts second-guessing her life choices. She remembers that she essentially bullied the old pope to death, burning his soul out in a brutal war of attrition. If I find out she murdered the pope, how will I look at her? Simple. She shoves the doubt away, deciding I'm her husband now, and I have zero say in the matter. Augustine and I finally cross the threshold into the dark inner sanctum. Even from the doorway, I can feel a crushing, oppressive aura radiating from the throne. I casually scope out the terrain while walking in, figuring out the exits for when things inevitably go south. If this is my new home, I need to know where the kitchen and the escape routes are. I finally lock eyes with the white-haired tyrant sitting on the throne. And honestly, she's gorgeous, so my type is officially ruined. But why on earth don't I remember ever meeting her? Heisa's breath catches the moment she lays eyes on me again. 6 months ago, my beaten body was a mess, but now my looks have leveled up to peak anime protagonist status. She casually dismisses Lord Augustine with a single wave of her hand, proving she commands serious authority. Watching her boss people around makes me extremely curious about who she actually is. She pads closer to me barefoot, her steps silent and light against the polished stone. For a split second, her silhouette reminds me of Shinalina, but I quickly shake that distracting thought out of my head. A refreshing, cool fragrance washes over me as she stops inches away. She declares herself my future wife with absolute confidence, bypassing any need for introductions. When she bluntly asks for my first impression, I give it to her straight without missing a beat. I tell her she's the most gorgeous girl I've ever laid eyes on. And honestly, reader, I wasn't even lying. She teases me about how many girls I could possibly have seen before getting amnesia. Playing the amnesia card is great and all, but it makes defending my naturally upright reputation a bit tricky. Eager to boost her favorability rating, I gladly accept her invitation to hang out. 15 minutes later, we're strolling through the upper reaches of her sprawling castle. She leads me out onto the highest tower peak, claiming it matches the palace's altitude. The panoramic view of Holy Demon City stretches out below us like a living fairy tale. The place is an absolute beehive of activity, with magicians zipping around everywhere. It's clean, organized, and remarkably bustling for daytime. She turns to me with a sly grin and asks how this sprawling magic capital compares to a place called Holy Light City. Bad move, Heisa. Bad fucking move. The moment she drops that name, my brain detonates with blinding, white-hot agony. I grip my head as a torrent of fragmented memories violently tries to claw its way out. Panic flares in her eyes as she immediately rushes to my side, cradling my thrashing head against her. She looks genuinely distressed watching me suffer. She channels a stream of cool, soothing dark magic directly into my skull. The agonizing fire instantly quells, replaced by a refreshing mental breeze. I slump against her soft embrace, breathing heavily as the headache fades into a dull murmur. I admit that Holy Light City feels intimately tied to my identity, even if I can't place it. She gently pats my head, whispering that I should just drop it and stop torturing my brain. She promises to take good care of me from here on out, making it sound almost convincing. I look up and catch her staring right back down at me with flushed cheeks. Her heart hammers against her ribs as she looks at my glowing face, completely captivated by the view. Fleeing the room in a blind panic, Heisa clutches her chest as her heart hammers wildly against her ribs. She has no idea what this foreign, overwhelming sweetness actually means. Back in his quarters, Cran realizes how close he just came to blowing his entire cover. If he had slipped up even once about Holy Light City, his game would have been over. Shaking off the paranoia, Heisa ignores her usual training routine the next morning. She skips the healing springs entirely, choosing instead to gaze out from the tower peak. She decides right then and there to march straight to Augustine's residence. As the absolute boss of the entire empire, she answers to nobody and does whatever she wants. Meanwhile, the Saint Heart has just caught wind of Cran's return and is ready to tear him a new one. She spent the last 4 months anxious and furious while he was away training. Cran sits in his room trying to cultivate in peace, but heavy, impatient footsteps shatter the silence. Reader, he did not find her charming. The pounding on his door is loud enough to wake the dead, followed immediately by a demanding, whiny voice demanding entry. Deciding it is safer to keep up appearances for now, Cran pulls the door open with a picture-perfect grin. The moment she catches his enhanced post-training charm, she completely forgets what she was going to yell about. Her entire expression melts into stunned admiration. That warm demeanor vanishes the absolute second Cran drops the bomb about his new engagement. She stands there frozen, her brain completely short-circuiting. Leaning into the chaos, he drops Heisa's full name right into her lap just to watch the fireworks. Look at him go, absolute menace behavior. Realizing the most powerful woman in the empire just claimed the man standing right in front of her, she feels pure, unadulterated hatred. She stands there plotting murder in her head, desperate to make them both pay, until a familiar voice rings out from the hallway. Heisa steps into the frame with a chillingly polite smile, instantly draining all the color from the Saint Heart's face. Caught red-handed, looking like she's about to commit a felony, the Saint Heart stammers out a pathetic excuse on the spot. Seeing the whole scene play out, Heisa's mood swings right back to ecstatic as Cran beams at her arrival. Game, set, and match for the queen. Crane tries to play it cool, but his voice betrays his unease as he remembers his entanglement with another woman just yesterday. He's juggling a dangerous game of romance and deceit. Sacred Heart watches nearby, absolutely grinding her teeth to dust with jealousy. She is practically screaming on the inside, forced to stand there and swallow her bitter rage. Heisa smoothly steps in to assert total dominance over the furious girl. With a patronizing pat on the shoulder, she delivers a razor-sharp warning about knowing one's place. Faced with absolute humiliation and the threat of severe retaliation, Sacred Heart has no choice but to fold. She tucks her tail between her legs and beats a hasty retreat. With the annoying competition cleared out of the way, Hysa turns all her attention back to Crane. She boldly takes his hand, dragging him deeper into the bustling city streets. Crane flinches at the sudden physical contact before remembering they kissed last night. Honestly, at this point, holding hands is practically casual. When Hysa teases him about being entirely too used to interacting with girls, Crane instinctively looks away. Smooth move, player. Way to immediately raise a giant red flag. Hysa's detective radar immediately pings, sensing something is deeply off with his supposed shyness. She locks her piercing gaze onto him, demanding answers without speaking a word. Feeling the intense pressure, Crane stammers out a pathetic excuse about them moving too fast. He tries to downplay his own worth, secretly suffocating under the weight of his guilt. Completely misinterpreting his frantic backtracking as cute premarital shyness, Hysa's mood instantly rebounds. She graciously waves away his concerns like a benevolent queen. Crane grits his teeth and forces a cooperative nod just to keep his revenge scheme alive. Reader, he is playing a very dangerous game with a total sociopath. Holding hands once more, the pair arrive in front of a stunningly elegant architectural masterpiece. Crane's eyes immediately light up at the sight of such fine luxury. Stepping inside, they find an upscale restaurant entirely empty of patrons. Yes, folks, we are officially diving straight into the classic billionaire booked the whole venue trope. A sharply dressed waiter steps forward, absolutely stunned by Crane's striking appearance. He swiftly escorts them to a gorgeous second-floor window seat overlooking the city. Settling into their seats, Hysa pulls out a mysterious little box with a triumphant grin. She slides the gift across the table, eager to see his reaction to her expensive bribe. Crane pops open the lid to find a magnificent glowing ruby pulsing with raw thermal energy. Touching it floods his body with a massive surge of fiery power, upgrading his physique instantly. Hysa casually drops a legendary century-old Vulcan crystal right into my lap. It's wildly precious and totally illegal levels of tempting, but I have to play it cool. She insists there are no refunds for gifts and pressures me to take it anyway. Honestly, her smooth confidence makes me wonder what her real angle is here. I quickly change the subject to her elemental affinities to dig for intel. Turns out she wields both dark and spatial magic, which is a terrifyingly rare combination. She admits dark magic is her primary focus since spatial cultivation resources are practically non-existent. Reader, I am nodding along because finding those treasures is a royal pain. Just as I'm getting comfortable, she casually pivots the chat to our upcoming wedding details. For fuck's sake, I thought we were just having a casual lunch. My mind races through every paranoid theory in the book. Is she terrified of me getting my memories back and trying to lock me down with domestic bliss? When she suggests tying the knot as early as next month, I nearly spit out my tea. That is rushing things just a tiny bit, don't you think? She completely bulldozes my objections by asking if I secretly hate her guts. If you don't dislike someone, she reasons, you basically love them. Flawless logic, truly. We settle on Holy Demon City as our future base of operations, and lunch finally arrives. One bite of this monster meat and the rich juices instantly flood my mouth. The taste hits me with a wave of severe nostalgia for Milia's cooking. I haven't seen that poor girl in ages, and a sudden wave of guilt crashes over my chest. Hysa instantly catches my sudden mood shift and asks if I'm feeling all right. I quickly pivot, claiming the sheer excitement of our upcoming wedding has me overwhelmed. She promises we've got all the time in the world for me to fall head over heels for her. I have to admit, she plays the dream partner role with terrifying perfection. After a shockingly pleasant meal, we head out toward her personal estate. She casually mentions I've got VIP clearance here forever, which is a nice perk. She insists I move straight into her house to completely cut off any annoying interruptions. Clearly, she hasn't forgotten Sacred Heart ambushing me earlier today. When she casually brings up our stolen kiss from yesterday, all my defenses completely melt. I literally bolted out of there like a coward, and she knows it. She teases me about whether this is my first rodeo, leaving me standing there completely speechless. Reader, The man is entirely out of his depth. Cran takes a deep breath, deciding to come clean about his past encounter with the Red Dragon Queen in Dragon Valley to test Heisa's true feelings. Heisa's heart freezes in sheer disbelief and cold fury when she realizes her fresh new man has already been thoroughly ruined by a dragon. She quickly patches her expression, deciding that instead of a powerhouse husband, her sloppy seconds can just become a kept house pet. Cran spots the glaring flaw in her performance instantly, figuring out she doesn't actually love him and deciding to play right along with her game. She insists on skipping any grand public ceremony and demands they rush off to get married immediately in total secrecy. They materialize inside a church before Augustine, who blinks hard in pure shock at how fast this morning's stroll turned into an afternoon wedding. Augustine spots the quiet contempt dripping from Heisa's face and immediately recognizes the miserable abyss Cran is about to throw himself into. With zero hesitation, Cran boldly steps into the trap and pledges his life away without blinking an eye. Heisa chimes in with her own enthusiastic vows, barely containing her inner glee at pulling off this humiliating setup. With a heavy heart and a face twisted in silent agony, Augustine finalizes the vows and pronounces them man and wife. Cran leans in for the wedding kiss, feeling entirely awkward while she mentally mocks his ruined innocence. Reader, he did not think this through, because nothing says romance quite like marrying a literal sociopath in an empty room. Now that the trap is officially sprung, Cran starts planning how to use her own deception to execute his secret agenda. Heisa sits back in her room, fully convinced she has completely outsmarted him, and locked down her favorite new toy. They sit down for a celebratory dinner, both of them acting completely devoted while plotting against each other in absolute silence. The game has only just begun, and Cran is more than ready to turn the tables on everyone in Holy Demon City. A passionate embrace turned suddenly aggressive as Heisa branded me with dark magic, leaving a sharp sting on my lips. She pulled back with a possessive grin, declaring that I now belonged entirely to her. I lowered my head and played the part of the obedient, slightly embarrassed captive. With a sweet farewell, we left the hall together under the watchful and troubled gaze of Augustine. The next morning, Heisa woke early and lingered over my sleeping form with undisguised affection. She admired the battered state of my body, completely convinced I was her helpless little prize. When I fluttered my eyelashes and greeted her with a bright morning smile, she melted instantly. Reader, I played the devoted boyfriend so well I almost deserved an Oscar for it. She mentioned needing treatment for an unhealed injury, pulling back her clothes to show a nasty wound on her abdomen. I recognized that residual aura instantly. It belonged to the murdered Pope. The bitch had the absolute gall to murder the Pope I cared about and then crawl into my bed pretending she loved me. The sheer, shameless hypocrisy of this woman made my blood boil. I forced all my fury down and plastered on a look of pure, innocent worry. I asked her what happened, pretending I recognized the lingering magical signature as an old enemy's. Panicking that I might figure out the truth, she quickly covered the scar and made up a clumsy excuse about an enemy who was already dead. The sudden guilt washing over her was practically written across her face. When I offered to accompany her to get treated, she firmly pushed me back down onto the mattress. She told me to stay home and play house like a good little boy while she was gone. I agreed without a fuss and watched her hurry out of the room without looking back. As soon as she vanished around the corner, my pleasant demeanor dropped completely. I caught that flicker of genuine guilt in her eyes before she left. Good. The girl still had a scrap of humanity left in her, which meant I could easily manipulate her. With the coast clear, I hauled out my trusty forging hammer and raided Chanelina's stolen treasury for rare materials. If she wanted to play games, I had plenty of busy work to keep me occupied. I hammered away at the metal straight through the afternoon until darkness fell outside. When night rolled around, I headed back to the bedroom to wait for my favorite assassin to return. She didn't stagger back into our room until very late, carrying a heavy aura of lingering resentment. I snuck up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist, instantly breaking her icy resolve. The moment I offered a kind word and a warm smile, all her dark thoughts evaporated into thin air. She turned around and buried her face right against my chest. Clinging to me like her life depended on it, she whispered about how deeply attached she was getting. I patted her back and played along, because wrapping her around my finger was entirely too easy.